Hello. What is going on, everyone? Happy Thursday. That's the day of the week that it is. um,
Where are we?
Yeah, I ask myself that at least 3 times every single day. Um, so I hope everyone's enjoying their week. I am having a special stream party tonight with some... Hello, Real Minty Lemon. How are you tonight?
Hi, Minty.
I'm here with some of the Trepies here.
Hello.
All right, something
What
is
going on, everyone. Happy.
Oh, is that me? I'm sorry. I'm getting
Thursday.
some.
That's the day of the week that it is.
Audio feedback, and it's because my stream is not muted, and now I'm fixed. Great.
That'll do it.
Sorry about that. I'm like, why does this music keep playing over and over again? Tonight we're having a special Final Fantasy VIII party. Welcome to my fellow Trepies here. Thank you very much for joining me. I'll give you a chance to introduce yourselves in just a moment for anyone who doesn't already know who you are. For anybody who doesn't already know who I am, my name is Captain Stickfigure. You can just call me Preston. That's fine too. I'm a career streamer. I focus a lot on retro stuff, a lot on Final Fantasies, but none of that is exclusive. I like to hop around and play different things. There's an S at the end of that word. I like to tell people that I'm playing every game in order. I just finished Final Fantasy VIII this past Monday for the second time, and I feel very complicated feelings and opinions about it, and I needed to have a conversation with other people who also have opinions, and so that is why we're doing this right now. I haven't played Final Fantasy before, but I want to. Any Final Fantasy, you simply must.
There's so many to choose
There's
from.
a lot of Final Fantasies.
There's a couple.
And where to start?
There's
One
one or
coming
two.
out at the end of the month.
That's true. Where to start with
There's
Final
a Final
Fantasies?
Fantasy for everyone.
That's true. That's got to be true. All right. So, why don't we do some quick introductions, and you can talk about also your experience with Final Fantasy VIII. What gives you your opinion about Final Fantasy VIII? What's your experience playing it? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Vagabond.
First off, Captain Stickfigure, sorry. Thank you so much for having us on. For those who don't know, my name is Vagabond J. I'm also a variety streamer who likes to hop around. Unfortunately, I don't stream much Final Fantasy, but that doesn't stop me from being a bit of a Final Fantasy fan. I like Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy IV, Final Fantasy VIII. And my current verdict with Final Fantasy VIII, I do have a little bit of a, I like it, but I also don't like it. See, when people think of what the best Final Fantasy is, it's either 6, 7, or 9. Usually some people also say Final Fantasy X. Some people might also say Final Fantasy XIV. Some people might even go as far as say Final Fantasy XIII. Final Fantasy VIII is just kind of in the middle there. So I guess for me, some things I do really love about it, but I do feel like there's some things that do kind of holding it back from being like a Final Fantasy VI or a Final Fantasy VII or 9. So yeah, I guess that's my opinion on Final Fantasy VIII. Yeah, I guess that's all I have to say.
Great stuff. Peachy.
Hi, my name's Peachy, or Marie, which is my actual name. I am a variety streamer as well. I mostly play open world, action-adventure, RPG games. I have been playing Final Fantasy since the first Final Fantasy on NES. A lifelong Final Fantasy gamer. I hate Final Fantasy VIII. There's very, very little positives that I have about Final Fantasy VIII, but that opinion comes with some caveats because I haven't played it since 1999, so it has been 25 years of me just hating Final Fantasy VIII, and I played it as a child. So I really think I need to revisit it now as an adult. I think it's a little convoluted. It's very convoluted. And I think maybe as an adult, I would be able to read into a lot more things that I did not understand as a 12-year-old. So it is my goal this year to play the remaster on Steam and hopefully change my mind a little bit. But I literally came with a list of things, general things, because again, 25 years, I've lost a lot of the plot. It doesn't feel memorable, but I do agree with Vagabond saying that the fan favorites tend to be 6, 7, 9. My favorite is 10, but I do agree it's not the best Final Fantasy. 10 is a nostalgia thing for me. In my opinion, the best is either 6 or 9. 8 ranks very low in terms of quality for me. I'd say it's in the bottom 3. Maybe the second to last, honestly. Like, it's really, really low for me. But I'm hoping someone here can change my mind, and maybe I'll go into my first replay with a little bit more of an open mind when I start playthrough number 2 this year.
Lovely. Okay, and last but certainly not least, Dove.
Hi, I'm Dove. I am also a queer streamer. My pronouns are she or they. I'm not necessarily variety. I do a lot of challenge runs mostly, so I'll play these games over and over again and with a lot of different rules and limitations and stuff. For example, I did 10 No Sphere Grid a while back. The last time I played 8 I was only using Guardian Forces and nothing else. That was pretty fun. So I played this game fairly recently, and it's not in my top 5, but it's probably closer to the top of my list than the bottom. I have a very deep love of Final Fantasy as a whole, and as such, I don't think any one Final Fantasy could ever objectively be called the best or the worst, because you're comparing apples, oranges, lemons, pineapples, citrus, traffic cones. Like, they're all so varied and different. I don't think you could put them on an objective scale and say this one is better or this one is worse. Like has been echoed at this point. Probably the fan favorites are 6 through 10. I see a lot of 7, a lot of 10, a lot of 6. I've seen you don't see as much love for 8, but I definitely have, and I have a deep love for it as well.
I guess I didn't really explain my experience. I just said that I had opinions. So
you just had an experience with it too.
Yeah. I had actually a kind of a similar experience to you, Peach, in that I played it when it came out. And I was and still am like huge Final Fantasy VII mark. And so when Final Fantasy VIII was presented to me, I also played a lot of like older RPGs. I'm very used to that traditional turn-based system, and the mechanics that come along with it. And so when 8 is presented to me, I just no, I hated it. Didn't give it a fair shot, but I hated it nonetheless. And I just went through my entire life convinced that 8 was the bottom of my Final Fantasy list until I played 10. And I really, really, really dislike disliking things. And so I picked Final Fantasy up on a PlayStation Store, Square Enix, Jesus, I just aged myself, sale. And I thought, I'll pick it up for $5. I'll try it again. And I could not make any sense of the junction system whatsoever. It was a huge obstacle for me. And so I replayed it using a guide. I got through the whole thing. But it's very distracting from the overall story experience if you're focused on a lot of the meta and the systems and power gaming, like the guide that I was using was. So I agree. I didn't find it memorable at all. But I wasn't satisfied with that, and I wanted to have a more organic experience. So my most recent playthrough that I just finished, I didn't use a guide. I played through it just using the knowledge that I had acquired previously. And I have to say that I had a much more positive experience this time than I did the first time. So that was nice. But it's still like, there's just still something in my brain that I can't entirely put my finger on, and I can't decide if I like it or not. So I thought that we could start by talking about the characters. I think that's probably, you could argue, the most important aspect of a good RPG is the characters, right? So does anybody have any particular characters that they love or that they hate, that they wish would die forever?
All of them. What? Who said that?
Wow. Wow.
I was going to say all of them, but on the first part of that question.
Well, it depends on what theories you believe in, but
I've read.
some
Oh my
people
god, I know what
die.
theory you're thinking of, and I've read it, and it makes no sense. It makes less sense than the actual game to me. Maybe we should start with Squall, since
Sure.
that's the main guy.
Mm-hmm.
Now I did character work. Several cutscenes.
I did just say 10 is my favorite. So what I'm about to say will make no sense because I just said 10 is my favorite.
Okay.
Squall is so annoying. And that makes no sense because half of the cast of Final Fantasy X is so annoying. But let it be known, the best part of 10 is Auron and Lulu. And that's what I'm here for.
Okay.
But yeah, everyone else in Final Fantasy X is like miserably awful. I get it. I play through 10 and I don't understand why I like it, but I just do. Squall was so annoying and broody. I don't know what it was, but I feel like that was the first Final Fantasy game I played. Well, Cloud is kind of annoying too, but I feel like he was so broody and like, I'm a loner, and I'm like, you're so edgy. Like, that was the first time I played an RPG where the main character, I feel like, was not supposed to be likable. Like, were we supposed to like him?
That is a very complicated answer.
Right? It was the first time I played an RPG where the main character, I felt like, was trying so hard to get everyone to not like him. So from the jump, I felt icky about him.
Mm-hmm. Do you have thoughts about that, Dove?
Yeah, so Squall is probably one of the most misunderstood characters in Final Fantasy just because, like, the translation made him a lot more brooding than he was. A lot of the themes of Squall's character in 8 deal with overcoming abandonment issues. In his mind, if he doesn't have anyone, around, then he can't be abandoned again. But it never got translated well, and especially in other media where voice acting became prevalent, like Dissidia and especially Kingdom Hearts, which I have the caricaturizations of Final Fantasy characters notwithstanding. I found him pretty relatable for a myriad of personal reasons, but I guess especially when you're 12 and playing it for the first time, that's how he comes off, is, brooding and edgy and loner. But as an adult, especially playing it recently, it's easier to understand why he is the way he is, especially surrounded by characters that are trying desperately to tear down the wall that Squall has put around himself. So you're surrounded by all these very vibrant, bubbly, energetic characters around this absolute stoic, lonesome type. And it paints a pretty stark contrast. And it paints a pretty good picture of, like Squall trying desperately to keep his worldview, to keep his wall, to you know, maintain the not losing anyone again through not letting anyone else in. But
This is the insight I was looking for.
Let me tell you
This
that
is what I'm like. I need someone to
hobby of
convince
analyzing
me.
games.
I was 16 or 17 when Final Fantasy VIII released, and I think that I both heavily related to Squall because that is exactly as moody as I was. But also as a player, I hated it because I think Squall's characterization is so far from the norm of what we expect from a JRPG protagonist. And
I think that's what it was for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just
I think if you're not
different from what I was used to.
Yeah, if you're not ready for it, and I think if you don't have the level of insight to sort of see what they're doing, which I didn't, I think it does come off as pretty obnoxious. But I know, I mean, even just recently, as you said, a lot of people have been playing Final Fantasy VIII lately, it seems like, and I've seen a lot of people talking about it, and a lot of people talking about how much they related to Squall's internal monologue and his word I'm forgetting. But that is a synonym for what I just said. So yeah, I think it seems like it really depends on the audience member, how they interpret how Squall is. I mean, I could say I was similarly annoyed by Titus in Final Fantasy X. I say Titus. Don't at me.
It's Titus. But he's so annoying.
And
So irritating.
and after
the first thing
designed
that's
it,
irritating
yes.
is it's pronounced Titus, which is stupid.
So both are right, actually, because both in their respective languages are a mean tide, which was what they were going for. So Titus and Titus are both correct.
thank you.
Really?
Titus in the West in English and Titus in Japanese.
In English, it is actually said Titus in the cutscenes.
Wait, they actually like say it in Final Fantasy X itself, or
In the cutscenes,
No.
yeah. Yes.
They never say his name in 10.
Are you sure?
because I
10
know
too,
I know
actually.
they do it in Kingdom Hearts where Titus does show up, and I
Maybe
think
that's what I'm thinking of.
the first game I think they did call him Titus. I think it's right. And then Final Fantasy 2, or not Final Fantasy, Kingdom Hearts 2 onward, they called him Titus. And I think there's like some weird
Maybe
translation
maybe
error
it's
thing,
Kingdom
which
Hearts or Final Fantasy
didn't help
II,
it,
then.
I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that didn't help. I think it was when Dissidia came around, they finally settled on Titus being like the pronunciation. But I also don't recall them actually ever saying his name in Dissidia at any point.
Well, I didn't mean to start a fight about it, but
I do agree that he is very annoying.
he is annoying. And
But he's annoying for the same reason, to me at least, for the same reason. And I mean, similar backstory, this abandonment issue thing.
I think that if
your dad being a jackass, but like,
I think if Final Fantasy VIII had come with voiceover, I may have felt the same. Like the personality to me is grating. Although I will say that having played through the game twice in recent history now, Squall has grown on me.
that's why I feel like I have to. So in the remaster, is there voiceover? Is there dialogue?
There is not.
There's not.
No,
okay.
it's literally just a graphical upgrade, and that's it.
Because I feel like that's the other thing too. And I noticed this playing other Final Fantasy games again as an adult, where there's no audio dialogue, that you really are reading things in the, like, you know, you're not always, you can't read tone. Basically, that's what you lose.
Yeah.
So it's also possible that I was playing Final Fantasy VIII and I'm like, why is this guy such a jerk? And like, maybe he wasn't a jerk. I was just reading it that way because I'm a 12-year-old and I'm also a jerk. So like, you know, like maybe that's why I was reading it like that, where I'm like reading a personality that might not actually be there. So that's also a possibility.
He absolutely can be a jerk at times. There's no
Oh yeah,
denying that.
for sure.
Yeah, well,
Oh, yeah.
I'm gonna tell you, this is gonna probably sound silly, but when I stream games that have dialogue but don't have voiceover, I do character voices, as many do. And one of the things that helped me get over that hump with Squall was sort of the performance of his lines, because I didn't read him as like whiny and edgy. I read him as reluctant and put upon, and I think that really helped to reframe how I was viewing him, because so much of his dialogue is not like, it doesn't read to me anymore as like moody and like emo and like
that makes sense.
it reads to me as someone who everyone in his life is making demands of him that he never volunteered for. And so all of his line readings to me are just like, I hate this. I don't want this.
like reluctant hero kind of shtick.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so Squall won me over. What about, I guess we'll just run through it. What about Zell?
I like Zell.
Strong.
Zell's
unit?
probably my favorite.
So we have Zell stands.
Zell's great.
Zell's probably my favorite of the cast.
I like his face tattoo.
Yeah.
I like his very large jorts.
I do think he looks the coolest. I will say this game, aesthetically, character-wise, with the exception of any time a sorceress steps on the scene, they're pretty boring looking. Like, they look very, like, normal. They're wearing mostly normal clothing. Like, they look very, like, realistic. For late 90s, early 2000s vibes.
Yeah. Yeah, they're 90s as fuck. Beck, do you have a question,
So
Vagabond?
No, I had something to add there.
Oh, sure.
For like the whole very normal looking, because I also actually got that same impression with like the normal looking kind of vibe, and I think because up until that point, like with mainline Final Fantasies, is that like Final Fantasy always had like somewhat cartoonish kind of looking, kind of had a little bit of a cartoonish vibe. Same thing with 7 as well, which came before it, which had like the chibi sprites, and then there's more realistic sprites, but they didn't have like proper textures on them. So, you know, they again looked a little cartoony. And then when Final Fantasy VIII kind of came around, like now you have like a bit more realistic faces that, okay, doesn't exactly hold up too well on the PS1.
He is the most attractive guy there.
Oh yeah, no.
You remember.
And then there's the pixel face.
It's like a blur.
But yeah, I guess that's one of the things that does kind of I'm not too great on with the character designs, and I feel like this is kind of the same thing going forward with like some future Final Fantasies, is that it does kind of go more into the more realistic looking route. Now I know the monsters, like, you know,
clothes. But
Oh,
even
yeah.
their clothes, like their clothes were things that people would actually wear. Significantly less belts in Final Fantasy
You
VIII.
have hardly any belts at all.
They all went to Lulu. She's like a whole dress of them. That's it. But yeah, I think that was what was so weird. I mean, 7 had kind of realistic clothing, but Barrett's got a freaking machine gun attached to his hand. So
I was really about to say that as you were saying that. I was thinking, like, you know, 7. The wardrobe for 7 is really not
Mostly normal.
much different. In fact, I'd say it's in some ways even more sort of regular, but those character designs are so iconic. And I wonder if it's just the love of the game and the characters stand out a little bit more, and so we forgive them.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like 7 had like elements of kind of weird, but their clothing was grounded a lot in reality too. And I'm thinking of like, go back one game, you go to 6, Locke is like, I want every pattern on my outfit. Match them all. Like 6, and even before 6, but like 6 was the last time I feel like clothing was weird from like 1 through 6, and then 7 it started getting a little more grounded in reality. But 8, I felt like it was kind of like street style. Like everyone could wear those clothes out and no one would be like, what are you wearing?
Yeah,
It
totally.
was just very like normal looking characters, which is why I liked Zell, because I feel like he was a little more flavor
Yeah.
on the clothes, and the tattoo on the face definitely is helpful on that too.
Yeah.
I think it just comes down to this setting. Like 8 went for like a lot more realistic of a setting that Final Fantasy hadn't really explored up to that point. Like 7 was a lot less fantasy, a lot more sci-fi, a little bit more grounded in reality, but like there was still a lot of futuristic elements in 7 that were presented like a lot more early on. Well, with Midgard topside and everything. And then 8 just it's a school that like anybody could go to.
Yeah.
And the uniforms, which, people I don't know how everyone else grew up, but I had uniforms in middle high school. It felt very easy to, I guess, immerse myself in the setting of 8 because it felt a lot more close to home at the age that I played it for the first time.
Yeah.
That's so interesting because I feel like one of the things that didn't grab me about 8 is how there wasn't as much fantastical, going on. Like the first 4 hours of the game is going to school and then going on a mercenary mission, and like there's monsters, but there's nothing really like big in Final Fantasy happening. Maybe
if you like the first 4 hours of Final Fantasy VIII, I highly recommend Type 0, which is the worst Final Fantasy game for me. The whole game takes place in school, and it's just military industrial complex for the whole game.
I'm playing it as we speak.
I hated it so much. But yeah, I agree. I see your point in how it was easy to immerse yourself because it is so set in realism compared to probably any other Final Fantasy. I can't really think of even the more realistic looking games now, like 15 and 16 their stories are not realistic whatsoever. They're still back in that high fantasy, like crazy monsters, magic, and all of that. And I feel like that's more of the focus. So even though the characters may look realistic, their clothing's a little more realistic to something you'd wear in real life. The story is crazy. Where like Final Fantasy VIII, the story is a lot more grounded in reality than other Final Fantasy games. So I can see how it's like easier to immerse yourself into that. I can see that perspective. That makes sense to me.
Yeah, it was a choice. I think also that sort of like artistic realism was very much the flavor at that time too. Like, I think it was it made sense that they did that to me. That they did that to me.
Me personally.
Yes.
Personally.
That they intentionally made a game that I would dislike. What about Quistis?
Okay.
Quistis
Does anyone have something to say?
Correct.
Because I just learned something today that confused me, and I was like, wait, did I read that correct? I had to literally Google today because I was like, there's no way that's true. So they're all in school. So they're all 17, like they're all in school at the same school. And Quistis is a teacher.
Yeah.
So I thought, and she's super serious. So I thought she was like 35. She is 18.
Yeah.
Yes.
That doesn't make any sense. Why?
She was she advanced through the academic side of Balam Garden incredibly quickly. She showed a lot of academic and a lot of academic aptitude and had a lot of leadership potential. They made her a teacher. She was, I forget how old she was when she became a seed. I want to say she was 16
I think that's right.
and then got her academic license at 17. She was very, very, very books in, books out growing up because that's how
imagine.
she coped.
I couldn't imagine going to school and your teacher's a year older than you.
And she has
That's
a crush
like,
on you.
I was like, what? She's also so serious. Like, she is the serious character.
Yeah.
I literally thought she was like 35.
Yeah.
Until
Quistis' advanced placement seed. Good for you. You graduate early. Now you're a teacher. Shoved to the back of the story. Quistis is my second favorite character. And
Yeah,
she's brutally underutilized.
I agree completely. She needed way more screen time. She would have been the absolute perfect foil to be a best friend figure to Squall, someone to poke at, to tease once his wall started coming down. She would have been the absolute perfect, sort of sibling flavored best friend role, as the story advanced. But her entire character arc was the first half of disc 1, and it's depressing.
Yeah. I really liked it though. It was so, her placement is subtle, I feel like, other than just being honestly kind of overtly shrewish. I think she's always she's kind of keeping everyone on task, and she's an instructor, so it kind of makes sense. But when you get into the subtext of that, she kind of has confusing feelings towards Squall that they don't really ever address. She kind of gets over it once Rinoa shows up, and then just gets to the back of the line. But I
They're
really,
okay, your time is
She
over.
liked Squall.
yeah, right, and it makes sense in the grander scheme of the story. But that dynamic is interesting, and I thought they could have easily had a Cloud, Aerith, Tifa thing.
Triangle.
Yeah, and they just gave it up. Maybe they just didn't want to rinse and repeat.
That and love triangles. I mean, they're good when they work, but when they don't,
Yeah.
I think what works so well in Final Fantasy on that triangle is that nothing came of any of it.
Mm-hmm.
So it all ended on will they, won't they, with anyone, and we're like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It just ended that way. And I think that's why it actually worked out so well. I still, to this day, argue with friends all the time who are Aerith Cloud fans, and I'm a Tifa Cloud fan.
Same.
I love the childhood friendship going into relationship. I think that's cute. Also, Zack and Aerith are too perfect. I can't break it up.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like that it was always teased and then nothing ever happened, because it kind of just had you going oh my god, someone do something. So that worked out really well. But I do agree. I feel like they definitely threw her away. They're like, you like this? We don't care. We have other things to do. And it was oh, okay. But yeah, that could have been interesting, but I feel like they probably wouldn't have done it correctly in a way that would have been interesting.
Yeah, it's a shame.
that's why I would have wanted Quistis to be more of a confidant and best friend figure that still continues to tease him like she does in the early parts of disc 1. And if she had just kept that energy, but also recognizing that Squall is finally coming out of his shell. Rinoa has finally beaten down that iron wall that he spent his entire life building up to that point. And being able to let herself in is something like that. Another outlet for Squall to talk at and vent and actually, be emotional, but not in the same way, with his romantic feelings towards Rinoa. There could have been a really good dynamic there where Squall actually confided in her a couple of times. I'm fan fixing and I recognize that.
No, I agree.
No, you're dead right.
Agree. I really feel like she could have fit in really well as the big sister.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Like, I feel like that could have been a really good dynamic if they just leaned into that a little bit more, but instead they just threw the whole woman away. They were like, goodbye.
They did.
Um,
Here's like the first 2 hours, and you don't get screen time no more.
Yeah.
yeah.
And like it kind of happened to Zell too. He got his character arc resolved relatively quickly, and then stopped existing.
Not
Yeah.
for me.
Not in our hearts.
He's just very loud, so he's still like anytime he had screen time, he made sure to make use of it. It's just he didn't get a character arc after
Yeah,
like
no, I
the
agree.
near end of disc 2.
He's eager to be seen.
Mm-hmm.
What about? All right, let's move on to Selphie.
Does anyone else have
Ellipsis.
anything nice to say about Selphie?
I love Selphie. I love her.
I like
so
her
much.
energy.
Yeah, I think she's dear. I love her. I love her energy. I like everything. I like the whole package. I'm in.
My most memorable scene with Selphie is in disc 1 when they're planning the train swap, and the first thing she suggests when it talks about what to do with President Delling is to blow up his train with a rocket launcher. And that's the energy. And that's the end of the conversation for me.
Yeah.
I feel she is not as annoying as Riku and Yuffie are to me.
Ooh.
She's
Oh, my
she's
heart.
pretty annoying. She's pretty annoying to me.
My girls.
A lot of Final Fantasies have that archetype of
Yeah.
She
young
is that girl,
character
right?
who is loud and annoying. There's not one in 4, but we have lesser extent Kryl, Realm, Yuffie, Selphie, Eiko, Riku.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
always
God,
there's
probably
just the one
Trish in
little baby
11,
girl.
To a very lesser extent Penelo in 12, and Vanille
Oh,
in
it is-
13.
I was gonna say it's definitely Penelo in 12. She is so annoying. And Vanille,
Pick
I
an
don't-
accent, Vanille. I swear to God, are you British, Australian, or Texan? I can't tell.
I love that you said that. I had to Google to make sure that the voice actress was actually Australian because that accent faded out so much. She's actually Australian.
Okay, because with Fang, it's very upfront. You know, Fang is
Distinct.
Australian. With Vanille, I don't know. She could be from London. She could be from Sydney. She could be from Dallas. I don't know.
I swear you ripped that thought out of my head because that game came out, what, 2009? I've been thinking that since then. That it bothers me. Vanille's accent pisses me off so much.
Wow.
But yeah,
Accents.
I'm always like very irritated by the little like annoying sister type because I have a little annoying sister. So every time I see them, I'm like, oh my God, it's her. Like, shut up. But yeah, I think that's what it is. It's just being the older sister, having the little baby annoying sister. I hate when they show up in my games. I don't think she's anywhere near as annoying as Riku, who has her moments, but annoying. And Yuffie, I don't have any good moments with Yuffie.
Wow.
I think she's really irritating. She's cute. She's cute as hell. Integrated, cute as hell. But she drives me nuts, man. I don't think Selphie's as annoying as them, and I think she's a little more purposed than the others. But she, that archetype just grinds my gears.
Oh,
I don't hate the archetype. It's just something I noticed that like a lot of Final Fantasies just have that character type in
Yeah.
some form or another.
Yeah. It was not a connection that I made until moments before you said it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'm always, this is the annoying baby sister type every time. Every game has it.
No, but it's funny because they're often my favorite characters or are high up on my list of favorites. Like I love Yuffie, I love Riku, I love Vanille. And I
met
didn't
Riku
realize
and
I have
like,
a,
"You're
I guess
never
I
in
have
my
a type.
party. Get out of here."
Aw. I don't particularly like using Riku, but I enjoy her
great.
presence. I like that she's here.
What
What was that?
She's great in No Sphere Grid Challenge, where you like
Oh,
lean
sure.
very heavily on mix.
That makes
I
sense.
can't even imagine a no sphere grid. That sounds terrifying. That sounds crazy.
So then Rinoa is next. I feel like Rinoa is a controversial character. I've gleaned
I
that
don't hate her.
a lot of people dislike Rinoa.
I don't hate her, but coming off of Final Fantasy VII, she reminds me of Tifa.
A little
Like,
bit.
hair
she
probably
just
does it.
seems like a watered down Tifa. So like I don't hate her, but that's probably because Tifa's my favorite in 7. So like I don't hate her, but she didn't feel original enough, especially coming out 2 years after Final Fantasy VII. Like that was the next game, and I'm like, you look like her. You've got a little bit of the sass kind of like her. I don't hate her though. Do people hate her?
I've maybe I'm misrepresenting that. I've seen some people saying that they very much dislike her, but they might not be. It might not even be a close split. But I just feel like maybe
She
just
falls a
just
little
very
bit
vocal.
flat. I think she falls a little flat here and there, but I kind of feel like they all do. I don't hate her though. I like her. She's probably in my top 3 characters for 8.
I feel like the criticism that I like Rinoa just fine, but I just for the record. But I feel like the criticism that I've seen about Rinoa is how prodding she is towards Squall, and also that there's like a sudden turn where like they have a very professional relationship, and then all of a sudden she's just all about him.
That is a late 90s thing
Yes.
because that is how TV shows were
Yes.
in the late 90s also.
Mm-hmm.
Where a girl would be like, I guess he's cute, and then the next episode they would be in love, and you're like, what happened? Did I miss an episode? Like,
Yeah.
what's going on? So I feel like that is just within the timeline of when the game came out. That is how we did TV. Like, we did media like that. So I feel like that's more of a product of the time, but I do see, now that you're saying that, I'm like, that does kind of make sense. It was kind of just randomly set on.
Sam and Diane in Cheers comes to mind.
Yeah. There's also like a point in the story where, I mean, when we first meet Rinoa, she sort of has an unrequited thing with Cypher happening. And I feel like, I might be wrong about this, but I feel like that sudden turn that people perceive it kind of lines up with her seeing that Cypher is a direct rival, and that to Squall, and that he's working with Adea.
I think the Rinoa Cypher thing is a lot more overplayed than people think. They weren't serious in either English or Japanese translation. They were never serious. It was just kind of like they were a summer fling.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of fizzled out. And then like they both just kind of moved on.
All right. Yeah. So, and then Irvine, right? Is the only one left?
I love him.
Irvine's my favorite.
The second he showed up on screen, I'm like, video game boyfriend. That's the one. Obsessed with him instantly. He's a freaking like cowboy. He's just like Guardian Force. I don't know her. I do have a plot point problem with that though.
Yeah.
I don't know how spoiler we want to get on this chat.
I'm sure that particular plot point will definitely come up because there's a lot to be said about it.
Because it's terrible.
Yeah.
It's the worst part of the game.
Yeah.
Like,
We can definitely get into that when we
so that
when we
part is stupid.
go back into the story.
But I did genuinely. I loved him so much. Absolute favorite character of the game. Him and Zell, I loved a lot. Rinoa, I really didn't mind. She's probably my like 3rd favorite, and I really just didn't like anyone else. Or a lot of them just weren't memorable. Like they were just like whatever. But I loved Irvine. He's cute and I don't know. I just liked him.
Yeah, he's so much fun.
I feel like, first off, I've been pronouncing his name as Irvine for the entire time, so thank you, Captain Stick Figure,
I feel like I've heard
mentioning his-
people pronounce it Irvine.
But to me, Irvine's kind of, to me, he's actually probably the most forgettable out of the party. I sure he has a cool cowboy hat. Sure,
He's so cute.
When I give him a voice, when I speak his lines, I always give him like a "Hey y'all, it's me, Southern
Twang.
accent Irvine."
Yes.
But I feel like he's kind of the most forgettable. I might be forgetting a few like key moments with him, but I feel like he kind of falls into the same pitfalls as Zell and Quistis, where he shows up, does a couple things, and then just kind of stops existing in the story. I feel like part of that mainly is because the story itself is very centered a lot more around like Squall and to an extent like Laguna and Rinoa and all that stuff. It's a bit more driven, especially around Squall. So Irvine's kind of ends up being in the back burner largely, I felt.
I agree.
Yeah. We can talk about some of the more prominent NPCs a little bit later, but that is a perfect segue into the overall topic of why they do that to the characters. I kind of agree that for the most part, they're pretty forgettable. The story is very centered on who it's centered on, and everyone else is very peripheral. Quistis, Zell, Selphie, I think, is sort of in the middle because she has, I think, more connection to some of the story beats, and then Irvine, why is he even there? And
I do agree. I do feel like. Sorry to interrupt.
That's okay.
I do feel like out of the four other party members besides Squall and Rinoa, I do feel like Selphie kind of has like takes third place for prominence.
Selphie sort of has one major story beat, right? And it's after you've escaped the prison, and they're firing the missiles. And then she sort of leads one group to go back to Trabia? Question mark?
I feel like that's kind of everyone, now that we're talking about it, I feel like everyone has one little story plot.
Yeah.
And then they're like, okay, you don't matter though, so we're done with you. I feel like that might be, now that we're saying this, we've said it a bunch of times.
Yeah.
That might be why I don't like this game.
Dove, you were about to say something.
Everyone is like a throwaway character.
I want to give room for Vagabond. He's got his hand up.
Yeah,
Vagabond is the most polite
just
person I've ever been
talk
on
over me.
on a call with.
Sorry,
talk over me.
slight off-topic note. I try not to talk over people. Sorry about that. But yeah, I partly do say Selphie because not just with the missiles. I do kind of feel like with the whole thing with Trabia Garden and a little bit with like the festival at Balem Garden, right? I think she has some bit of prominence there because I know she was the one who was like kind of organizing that whole thing.
Hey, thanks for the follow. And there was a follow earlier.
Hello, Dwarf.
Also, thank you to whomever that was. Sorry to interrupt you, Vagabond.
No, it's all good. Yeah, that's all I had to kind of say on Selphie.
Yeah.
Selphie had two big story beats, both of them centered around Trabia Garden. After escaping the prison, she leads half the party to the missile base to try and stop the missiles from launching.
Right.
And then again, when the party collectively explores the ruins of Trabia Garden, she has a little bit more of a minor beat there.
Yeah.
So that's probably why Selphie takes third place. She got two.
She gets
scenes,
two. And my
and then
mind
Zell
often
got,
combines
like,
those into one.
kind of.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What?
And then
I don't even
Quistis got,
remember.
like, a little
Two.
early on, so she's very forgettable.
You're going to have to remind me, what is Zell's thing? I cannot for the life of me remember what important
when
thing.
you go into Balam Town near the end of the second disc, or like when Balam Town is under occupation,
Sure.
and you have to do that weird sneaking around. That's basically it. You know, he was adopted when he was young, so he got more of a normal childhood than everybody else. You kind of see glimpses of that in his home.
Mm-hmm.
He's well loved by his adopted mother, and he loves he loves his town, he loves his people. They gave him an actual life. It's nothing grandiose like Selphie got, or anything super analytical deep that like Quistis got. But the biggest peak of it is that or doing the library girl with a pigtail side quest line. You
Sure.
learn a little bit more about him.
Yeah.
There's not much there, and it's a crime because Zell's great.
Yeah. Agreed. And then so Irvine, this is the one. Irvine also kind of has two story beats, and one is sort of more minor, although it's kind of the whole premise for his introduction is the assassination against Adea, which is actually one of my favorite scenes. I love the scene when it's just Squall and Irvine, and Irvine can't take his shot.
Oh yeah.
I think that's a really, really beautiful scene. And then after that, he kind of checks out for a little while until Irvine is the mode by which we discover that everyone is childhood friends. Because
The dumbest plot line
yes,
ever.
he remembers everything, but didn't say because he didn't want to be rude because he's a gentleman.
Terrible.
So they all have memory loss because of the Guardian forces.
Guardian Force.
What's your viewpoint on that?
That's just that that Guardian Forces are stupid. That's just the Guardian Force critics though saying that, not me. So
Sure.
So I kind of feel like it's a little contrived. Like it's kind of like all the party members being orphans at the same orphanage, and then all of them except Irvine kind of having collective memory loss. Even with the reason of it being the Guardian Forces, I do feel like it's a little bit like of a silly kind of forced plot point almost.
Out of nowhere. Nowhere.
It does come a little bit out of nowhere. Yeah. I guess the one thing I do feel a little bit more strongly about, and this is in the same scene, but slightly different topic regarding the Guardian Forces. I forget who said it. It was either like Quistis or I believe her name is Adea. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Who's in that scene? Someone mentions Guardian Force critics. And I think it's silly how... Yeah, Quistis. I think it's silly how they mention Guardian Force critics, but you never... I guess I'll talk more about it when we get more to like the Guardian Forces specifically. So I guess that's all I have to say on the the plot point.
So, as an FF8 apologist,
Go ahead.
That scene it could definitely have been done a lot better. The idea, from what I understand from having played it like half a year ago, is that when you junction a Guardian Force, it takes up an actual like part of your brain, the part that contains long-term memory. It is absolutely contrived that like that was the reason they forgot their childhoods, but like you can also look at what all they went through in that time. Like it was pretty traumatic. Like I don't, being an orphan isn't exactly the easiest thing in the world anyway. And then like from a young formative age, they are now in what is effectively military school from single digit age to adulthood to 17, 18, basically. And they all had various circumstances in their lives. And like Squall and Cypher fought a lot. Quistis was nose deep in a book. Zell was embracing, an actual new life. Selphie was far away in a different nation, basically. Making her own friends. Like they were all just like, this is again just kind of like half headcanoning, but they were all just like also trying to move on from what was a very not great time of their life.
Mm-hmm.
And then combined with the fact that, like, they're in military school, they have to take these studies incredibly seriously. And, the point of Guardian Force is taking up a physical spot in their brain that controls long-term memory. It's very easy to forget things like that. That said, the way it was presented was not the best, and Irvine did feel like a vehicle to deliver that, plot twist, rather than it actually coming in an organic way.
I think
Like, if they
that's
like
you put it exactly how. Like, I don't think the plot point was bad. It was the entire execution of it was miserable.
It's a bit clunky.
It was so poorly executed. It was just sprung on us. And I haven't played this game in 25 years. So, and the two of you have played it pretty recently. There are no like hints beforehand, right? There's no like little seeds being planted. It's just like, oh yeah, by the way, we all knew each other, and I didn't tell you for the longest time. Oops, sorry, right?
Yeah. That's
Yeah, that part.
That's literally how it
I can't
happens.
believe you forgot. But it's like, I don't know, a decade and some change has gone by. I've had that happen to me. I've met up with like old friends that I hadn't seen in like 5, 10, 15 years. And then we get to talking. It always comes to, how could you forget something like that? I've been there, and I've been on both sides of that, where it's like, I've looked at someone I haven't seen in years. How could you forget that? Someone's looked at me that hasn't seen me in years. How could you forget that? So like, I get that, but like, in terms of presenting a plot to a game, it could have been done better. Like, if they had just found Idea's house and then that triggered their memories because they used to live there as children, that probably would have been a little bit more organic. I don't know how you get to that point, but it would have felt better than just Irvine knew the whole time and didn't say anything until now because they started talking about it. That they started talking about it and it comes out makes sense, but like, Irvine knew the whole time, that like with absolute total clarity, and said nothing.
Yeah.
Is probably the part that bothers me the most about that.
100%.
I don't remember what explanation he offers, because he says in the text, oh no, I knew the whole time. But I don't remember if he says like why he didn't say anything until it came up in conversation.
If I had to hazard a guess, he probably just assumed they knew from the start because they were all so close. That was the unit of people, was the childhood group. And like, nobody was acting like they didn't know each other. They were all relatively close. They were all, they had the camaraderie. They had the same kind of vibes that they did as kids. And then, probably over time, it's like, wait, they don't remember this, do they? And then like, as they talked about it in Trepied, probably, this is just me guessing. There's nothing in text to necessarily support this. It's just, if I'm putting myself in Irvine's shoes here, I'm assigned to this group with the joint mission between Balam and Galbadia Garden to assassinate the sorceress. And I see my childhood friends, and like, but it's a military mission. I can't just run up, hug them, be like, hey, it's been like 10 years. How's it going? There's a modicum of professionalism in that moment. And, they've all grown up and stuff, but like, everybody's acting more or less normal. I'm probably not going to question it for a while either.
You know what, though? You just brought a new point up, because also, if you're coming into this group and no one is like, hey man, it's been forever since I saw you, you're like, do I not know them? Like, maybe he felt like he was being gaslit in a like, oh wait, maybe I don't. What? Do they not remember me? No one is acknowledging that they know me. Like, could it be something like that?
Yeah,
that's
weird.
Also valid, because he's introduced
too.
by full name and profession and just inserted into the group. And there is enough downtime where they could have talked about it, like on the train from Galbadia to Delling City. But he's probably also just like trying to feel the group out. He's been this like lone gunman, loner, but also kind of like flirting with everybody with his image of being a lone gunman in the moment kind of thing.
The mysterious cowboy.
Yeah.
A serious cowboy.
So I'm gonna
absolute honking dork.
I'm gonna sort of like flip that around. Because even though I do think that twist comes completely out of nowhere and is handled really clumsily, if I remove those details, and just see it as Dove was saying, like as sort of symbolic of the trauma that they endured. I think it's a really nice detail, especially considering so Galbadia Garden, they don't do seed training. They're not like a military school in the same way that Balam is. So Irvine doesn't have the same experiences. You know, he's comparatively probably had a much easier time, and doesn't have all that built up, which I think is a really kind of neat aspect of that. And I kind of wish that they had just leaned more directly into the psychology of it rather than just dropping the GF detail in our labs.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I really absorbed a lot in this playthrough was those themes that I completely missed because they are so deeply buried in systems and weird nonsense, that like the core story surrounding the characters is really beautiful. And it's just everything else that's silly. So there's a bunch of other characters, and we spent a lot of time talking about characters, so we can sort of integrate this into the overall story. I have in parentheses, talk about the story. Is it good? Is it nonsense? I think it's both. Yeah. Yeah. Final Fantasies all come with a certain amount of internal logic, right? That you have to accept.
I feel like it's nonsense. I just think it's Final Fantasy VIII felt like, looking back on it now, I feel like that's the game you finish and go, well, that certainly was a game.
Yeah. My big issue with the story of Final Fantasy VIII isn't necessarily that it's bad, is that it jumps around so much.
There's a lot going on.
All time-bending sorceress absorb these monsters into your brain for powers. Monsters come from the moon. These are all ridiculous things. But all Final Fantasies have stuff like that. Right?
I'm like, I actually think this is on the low end of ridiculous for Final Fantasy.
I mean, it's...
my dad is a space whale. Destroying the world.
Right. But like, your typical Final Fantasy will just sort of drip you some of this stuff. But it grows and things escalate at a natural pace. And this one, it kind of hits you just like twist after twist after twist. Adea's the big bad. Oh no, she's not.
It's not, yeah.
She's actually your surrogate mother figure from when you were a child that you just don't remember because of the mind monsters. And like mid-game, the person that you thought was the main antagonist isn't really the main antagonist. It's very typical for a Final Fantasy also, but
of course, yeah.
Oh no, actually the sorceress is in space. Oh no, actually the sorceress is Rinoa. Oh no, actually the sorceress, the real sorceress, is in the future. You know what I mean? Like, oh, now you're in space in a spacesuit, lost forever. Like, there's just I just feel like it's constantly going in really jagged directions, and that's the thing that like really I think is my biggest flaw of Final Fantasy VIII, is that there's no like there's not really a logical sequence that I can see.
It's the execution of all of these plot twists. It feels like if you've ever babysat a child that tries to over-explain one of their interests and they just go on to one thing and then some other random thing, and you're like, what are you saying? That's how this story plays out, where they're like, we're going to do this. Oh, wait, and then also, what if we add this one thing? What if we add this one? And you're like, what are you doing? Like, stop.
Kind of feels like that, yeah.
There's no seeds. Yeah, there's no seeds planted.
Oh, seeds.
You need, I didn't mean it like that, but you know what I mean.
Are
like,
seeds planted?
You need to plant, but you need to plant little clues throughout the game, and they're not. They're just bombarding you with random stuff all the time. So I think those things could have been more like normal and sensical if there was a build-up, if there was some kind of plot from the
Exactly.
beginning, clue in the beginning somewhere, but they are just throwing random stuff left and right. And it's so, I have ADHD, and it really felt like being locked in my brain for too long. They're like, what if we do this also? And
No,
What-
you
what
haven't
is
missed.
going on?
You haven't missed the Squall Dead discussion yet.
yeah, it kind of feels like
I will
you
scream
like,
about that one.
It's coming.
we did not do the Squall
No,
is
not
Dead
yet.
discussion. But yeah, it felt very much like, I don't know, they just took a list of ideas and then they were like, yeah, we'll do them all. I don't know, we'll figure out where to fit them in.
Yeah.
It felt unfocused. It's kind of
I agree with that. Is very, very, very apt to how I feel about it. And I love the plot as a whole, and I can follow it from start to finish, and I can analyze it from start to finish. But when you get to the mid game, from the Trabia Garden orphanage reveal through the Ultimisia as a Sorceress from the Future bit, it kind of feels like a very jagged cliff and a tale of two games at that point.
Mm.
And like, if they had committed to one or the other, the story would have been more cohesive. It has pacing problems and the mid-game twists of trying to direct the game from one objective to the objective. Could have been done infinitely better. It would have needed more time and probably a fifth disc. But
I don't think they made game containers to hold 5 discs.
Just,
I don't think they
just,
did that.
just duct tape
They're
an
like, "We don't
extra
make
jewel
those."
case.
yeah,
Yeah, I do
another
still-
jewel case.
This thing is already, oh my god, my cat. This thing is already very chunky. They're like, we can't put a 5th disc. There's no place to put it in the containers.
Game
I
Revolution.
think it's just the way the way plot points were introduced, I think, is the downfall of this game, honestly.
On that, I
Um,
would absolutely not disagree.
Yeah, I feel like I could have been along for the ride if anything was introduced in a normal way. But like, it was just like, oh yeah, and also this.
Along for the ride if they didn't veer off the highway to see the world's largest rubber band ball or something.
Really, like, yeah.
Uh,
It's all over.
And I
web,
love the game and I love the plot, but I will absolutely agree that
Which
the
plot?
delivery.
Which one?
Yes.
all the plots. Website Game Revolution commented that where does it start? Oh no, I'm sorry, Edge. The game's length left its story unable to offer consistently strong dialogue and subplots. Additionally, it found some of the story's plot twists not suitably manipulated and prepared, leaving it hard to greet such moments with anything but indifference.
Yeah.
I would not disagree with that either.
Yeah, I think it's fair. I think the game has a lot of good ideas that, because you're not like led into it, they don't feel like they have any weight. You're just making shit up as you go. And I don't
That's
know
how
what
it
to feel about it.
100% felt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Vagabond, you indicated before we started that you had a lot to say about the story, or more to say about the story than
Well, I
about
don't have
other
as much to
details.
say about the story. I had more about to say about like gameplay and.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Not so
I-
much to say about the story.
sorry, you
Going
said
on
the
that, like,
opposite.
that whole- I do have a little bit of a different opinion about the plot
ahead.
twists.
Yeah.
Not so much as I can explain everything and I bring out like a whiteboard and all that stuff. So one thing I do like about like Final Fantasy is it does have a little bit of silliness. It does have a bit of humor to it. And I guess one of the things I do find humorous about Final Fantasy VIII. Final VIII, as we established, is a lot more grounded than most other Final Fantasies. But one thing I do find kind of humorous is the fact that there is a lot of these plot twists, a lot of these kind of half-baked-ish ideas that do kind of come out of nowhere. Like, for example, there's a boss under Balam Garden. I think it was like, what was his name?
Norg.
Norg, I think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Norg, oh my god, yeah.
The meme
Okay.
the
I
meme
didn't,
himself.
Yeah, the boss that was never revealed. Well, that just kind of gets revealed some seemingly out of nowhere, and then again another one of Balam Garden is how it can like rise out of the ground and it can like kind of float all over the place, and how there's spaceship in in space and stuff that was just coincidentally right nearby Squall, and Squall and Rinoa Rinoa kind of rescue Squall a little bit, I guess, something like that. I might be remembering
Something
that one
like
scene
that.
wrong. I apologize. But
it was Squall rescuing Rinoa, and then they find a drifting Ragnarok, and there were 3 that carried Sorceress Adele into space. So kind of a plot convenience, but they did give a reason as to why that ship was just floating in space.
yeah. But yeah, that's one thing. That's something I do kind of like about the story, even though all the like plot twists and partially like underdeveloped ideas work against it quite a bit. I do kind of find it funny, and I do kind of enjoy it like as an along for the ride kind of idea, kind of deal for it.
Yeah, it's all, I think, cool, like good writing and good, well, not good writing, but good ideas. And I think my biggest issue with all of it is that the game, it doesn't establish rules. Like, they tell you that there's a sorceress, so no one tells you what that means. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of stuff that just you're told at a certain point in the game, as if you should have known the whole time, but the game didn't tell you ahead of time that this stuff
There's no
matters.
like lore for why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
There is a lore section, but it's it's the same thing 13 has, where like, here's the world building. You have to go into another menu and read it on your own time instead of it just being in the plot.
Why I
Because
don't
all
like
of
Dark
that
Souls.
stuff is explained
Really?
in game and in the Ultimania guide, but it's one of those you have to dig pretty deep for it. And
Yeah, I don't want to
like that either.
read. Yeah, I don't want to read a book about why a game is the way the game is. I want the game to give me the story. I don't.
This is something I actually feel very strongly about Final Fantasy 13 is one of the things about video games that are different from like movies and books and like even music is it's an interactive medium. And instead of like Final Fantasy 13 does this especially, but with all the codex entries and like all the information is just kind of given to you, but you have to go to a separate menu and you have to read all this stuff. Well, okay, now you're reading it. Now you're not playing the game. I feel like, especially with 13, but 8 kind of also, but now that you mentioned the codex entries, I feel like it should have operated more on a rule of show, don't tell. I know it's probably not going to be as much of the case for 8 because, you know, got to fit it all into 4 discs. So, but
I mean, they could have taken one plot twist out to fit some lore.
maybe a couple actually.
That's outstanding. Then
it's a choose your own adventure. I chose them all,
Right.
like all of the adventure.
So I want to talk about the flashback sequences. We haven't really mentioned them at all, and I feel like that's a really major part of the story, but also sort of what makes 8 a very unique title in the Final Fantasy series. I feel, I think overall neutral, and I'll explain what I mean by that, is that similar to a lot of the other stuff that we've talked about, I feel like it's not explained in a satisfactory way. Not that I mean, it's really one of the only times that I feel like I'm really experiencing something along with the protagonist, which is, I think, an important aspect of the narrative. And I don't mind that they don't just tell you what is happening with that. Obviously, like, that makes sense. But because I don't understand the stakes, I don't understand the context of what's happening. It's so hard for me, like, once all those threads start connecting, it didn't land for me because I don't, wait, what did I just, huh? You know what I mean? Like, I didn't get it until I finished the game, and then I went on the internet and I started reading what the hell that's about. And then I'm like, oh, that's great. So what's your thoughts? What's your thoughts on that?
I very much vote to go last here.
Sure, go ahead. Anyone else?
I mean, I don't have much to say about it because that was a large part of my confusion in the game. Again, I think things were just randomly dropped in a non-consistent storyteller way where I just never knew what was going on. Again, 12 years old playing this game. So like I was always confused, and I think that's largely, this is just another thing that had me just not understanding why anyone would like this game as a kid, because nothing, everything just kind of dumped, and like, here's just some stuff. Here's some more stuff. And I'm like, what is going on? I never really understood anything. I really couldn't piece anything together. I left Final Fantasy VIII not liking it because I was very confused by it all. And the flashback sequences were not any different from that. I feel like it just kind of added to that for me. So again, I am hoping to play it again later this year. So maybe as an adult, I can piece things together a little bit better, knowing what I know now. But as a first-time player, I just didn't get it. I don't know. I didn't get any of it.
Vagabond?
I'm kind of in the same boat as Peachy here. I'm not really fully understanding of the flashback sequences. I mean, I like Laguna as a character. He's pretty all right, as well as Ward and...
Kira.
Sorry, I tend to forget a lot of names. Who's the third guy?
Kyros.
Kyros, yes. Kyros and Ward. I do kind of like them as characters, but those like the flashback sequences, especially with I kind of get what they were doing with Julia and Laguna, and then a lot of the scenes after that kind of left me with a bit of a head scratcher, because a lot of them, at least for me, felt seemingly somewhat disconnected. And going back to like the plot twists and the half-baked ideas, I do feel like kind of with Laguna, it was one of those like many ideas they had, but instead of like not explaining it and then it being a plot twist, they decided to actually roll more with this one. But I feel like they probably should have had like something near the beginning that like made it kind of a little easier to digest, I guess you could say.
Sure.
All right. So, the reason I wanted to go last is because this is segueing into a bunch of different things we've both talked about and ideas that I've had that would help the cohesion of like all of it. So in the sequences themselves, I feel like individually they are good contextually for where they are.
Mhm.
The first one happens when they're on the train to Timber and nobody knows what's happening, including the characters. It's a very good, this is a thing that is very important and probably going to matter a lot, and nobody knows what's going on, player or character. The second one happens outside of Galbadia Garden in the forest, where I think that's the one where Laguna throws himself, Kyros, and Ward off the cliff, etc. That one didn't feel as great. It just, like, the first one is Laguna and co escaping the timber forests, and the Squall, Selphie, and Zell are on their way to Timber. It feels logistically similar and also, a big what the heck moment. But also the scene in Delling City with Laguna and Julia. When the party gets to Delling City later, it's like, wait, but like, where's Julia? Where's Laguna? What do you mean this was like, you talk to enough NPCs, you find out this was like a long time ago. But a lot of people could gloss over that. and it's very easy to forget. With Cetra, it's big for Laguna's side because that's where Ward loses his voice. It's where Laguna gets injured and ends up at Windhill for like years, meets Rain. The next one I think is at the beginning of Disc 2, right after the first Adia fight, where Laguna's in Windhill, reunites with Kiros, finds out Ward is a guard in D District Prison. Come to find out, Zell was Ward in that sequence as well. So that's how Zell learned how to navigate the prison, adding that connection while also dropping some, world bits. So that particular dream sequence, even though we weren't with Ward, it functioned with the plot to help drive the prison escape. I forget the order of them after that because they kind of stop happening with frequency at that point.
Yeah.
I don't think there's another one on disc 2, in fact. I think the next ones are in disc 3 where Laguna is either going to Estar or like in Estar already. So it starts driving the connection. And by that point, it's pretty evident that the Laguna sequences are in the past. Because you can go to Windhill mid-disc 2 and find out, there's no Laguna, there's no Rain. People talk about Rain past tense. There's Selphie's blog, which talks a lot about Laguna. The Timber Maniacs, which talks about Laguna's journey. They're written by Laguna. And then it's, find out it's Elone sending you into the past to try and change it, but you can't change the past. There's nothing you can ever do to change the past. You can only move forward, living with regret sort of thing. And I think that whole thing, the Laguna sequences, Elone trying to see Laguna, trying to stop Laguna from leaving Rain's side while she was, having her baby, would have worked better if Elone was actually more prominent in the plot. And I think that if we were going to go with a childhood romance angle, that wouldn't have been a terrible avenue if you just kind of amalgamate Rinoa and Elone's roles in the story. Like if Elone were playable, but also disconnected from the group, but also disconnected in the sense that she's trying to change the past. I think those plot points probably would have worked a lot better. This is just my opinion. If their roles in the story were if they were one character, basically. Because Elone is incredibly important to the plot, especially when it comes to Ultimecia and time compression and sending consciousness back in time, but not actually able to affect anything in that time unless you have time powers or whatever. But but Elone is never on screen. She shows up for 5 seconds in the very beginning, a solid minute mid disc 1, and then when they figure out Elone's the one causing the Laguna flashbacks in the first place, she's on screen again for a couple of minutes, but is vital to the story as she is. Same issue I had with Luna Freya in 15. Just this character is incredibly important. They are vital to this world build, vital to this plot, but you're never going to see them.
To be fair, you see Luna Freya, and then you don't. Hated
Yep.
that plot points.
Same.
My girl. But yeah, I think, as you were going through all of the cutscenes, all the flashbacks and each one, and then you pointed out, you said disc 3 was the first time it's finally put together, oh yeah, all these flashbacks, they're actually flashbacks, because we didn't know what they were. We didn't know them as flashbacks. They just kind of looked like visions of some kind. We didn't have a timeline for them, I guess, is really for a while, correct?
Yeah. One thing though, Elone, when you talk to her in Balam Garden in disc 2 and they put her on the White Seed ship, she flat out admits she's sending the group back to the past through a power she has. So it's established, before the halfway point that it is very blatantly stated that it's flashbacks and it's Elone doing this, but it is still a good chunk into the game.
And and you've already experienced most of those flashbacks by that point.
About half of them, but yeah.
Yeah. Or at least frequency wise. I feel like they're more top loaded until that point, and then Oh, maybe I'm
Until
remembering
disc
wrong.
3 when there's like a bunch of them in a row, but that's like the
Yeah.
the resolution of Laguna's character arc at that point.
Right. I think maybe that's my, if I had a bigger, because I know even within the flashbacks, and they give you the context. Like there's a great deal of time in Windhill where it's just Laguna and Kyros like talking about all of the stuff that the player has missed while there hasn't been a flashback happening. So like you're given the context. I think because of the frequency and the fact that in between there's like very little focus on it. It's once I go back, it's sort of hard to retain that information. It's hard to connect them. And I don't know, maybe I think it's a good device. I think it's one of the better parts of the story, I think. Although I do agree that Elone should have been featured more prominently. But you know, I get it. But it just another thing to add to the list of things that I like. I just think they did it in a way that's kind of clunky, and
Great
they just
idea,
could've-
poor execution.
Yeah, but I mean,
feel
isn't that the mid '90s though? I mean, you know, this is a new era of
You know
gaming,
what?
and they were just throwing stuff at the wall and just doing their best, you know. So I can't fault them for that.
Yeah.
Maybe they just got
I
a
feel like
little
this
bit too
whole
overambitious.
I feel like this whole game really just suffers from like the throw it at the wall, see what sticks, and then even the things that didn't stick, they put in the game anyway. I feel like the execution is where this game fails for me, because I don't think the story is terrible. I just think the way they presented everything was crazy. Like it just wasn't a cohesive, smooth game.
Yeah.
It was all over. And anytime there was a new aspect, the junction system is also crazy. Like everything is just too much all at the same time. And I think that's really, for me, that's where this game fails. And also being a kid playing this game, so confusing, which is why I'm a little bit excited to play it as an adult, because one, I know, I've done a little bit more of a deep dive. Go away. A little bit more of a deep dive where I feel like I want to know what's coming, and two, I'll have like a better understanding to piece it together, to kind of circumvent the poor execution of everything. I think this is one of the games that really deserves a remake in a top to bottom rehaul to make it more cohesive.
I think that 8 is it could benefit more from a complete overhaul remake than 7.
Yeah.
I think 7, you know, you can like or dislike it, but I think 7 stands on its own better than 8 does, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think 7 actually was fine as it was.
Yeah.
I would agree with that, minus the translation.
Sure.
I do think the remake is doing a great job at like fluffing up, so giving us a little more context and lore, and fluffing up some characters. Like Avalanche is in 5 seconds of the,
Right.
of the original.
Oh, yeah.
And now we have like 3 brand new characters we actually like get to know.
Listen, I wouldn't trade 7 remake for anything in the entire world. I'm just like,
Oh, I love it.
objectively,
Well,
I
maybe-
think that 8 would benefit more than 7.
yeah, no,
but
7
I understand
remake-
why, and I'm not complaining.
7 remake made me like 7 original more.
I see it.
Because it just gave me more context where we didn't
Yeah.
were missing a little bit, or they were just giving us like a little bit extra.
Yeah.
So it like revitalized the things that I did like about 7. But 8 needs it,
Yeah.
I would absolutely agree with that sentiment.
because the story is there, the execution garbage.
It really
Like,
needs to be cleaned up. So speaking of execution, let's move away from the story and let's get into the systems. Another big obstacle that I had, as I said in our introduction, was the junction system. But I'm gonna sidebar triple triad also. as
I have triple Triad show and tell for you guys.
okay.
Fantastic.
I love triple Triad.
Same.
I don't even know where to start with the junction system because it's not even that I dislike it. It's not my favorite thing. But like the idea of equipable is an overarching statement of equipable abilities. I mean, 7 does it, 6 does it.
Material.
Yeah, like a bunch of them do it, right? So it's not a unique or new system, but the way that they do it, magic as consumables, and just like the tremendous amount of variety. Maybe it's just me because my playstyle is that I prefer much more streamlined systems. I would give me 6 characters that are all unique and pre-built, or like have very obvious strengths and weaknesses. Hold on one second.
Job
I'm
system.
getting a knock at my door. Hold on one moment. You can talk amongst yourselves.
Yeah, I mean that's the job system, basically. Which we had for a while in the older Final Fantasies. I think I don't get the junction system. I feel like 7 was the first time we had something kind of similar with materia, but you just slotted your materia into your weapon and then you were able to use those things, and then that was it. You put green, you could do cure. You put red, you could do fire. Like, that made sense. And I don't get the junction system to this day. I don't know. Someone explain it to me.
So this is where I open up the comparison to FF2, where, and it's a very, very loose comparison, but like, the games are like the most reviled out of the series next to 13. And they're also the ones that like did the most derivative things with the battle system. I think if you remove and make it a system or make it everything, then you kind of like take its identity from it. And if you make everything the same gameplay wise, you know, they don't really try anything new, see what works, see what doesn't, in terms of just like the series as a whole. The junction system isn't perfect. Neither is the stat gaining system in 2. Kind of goes back to the theme of good idea, poor execution. And like, there's a little, it could have been a little more intuitive, but it was intuitive enough. Like, you want more HP junction, like a healing magic to your HP instead of like fire or something. Magic is consumable, so I'm not gonna defend too hard. But they could have just like, you know, over the course of the game, you acquire a spell, and that spell can like you acquire fire, just like you draw it from something, you have that spell. You can slap it onto a character, and as it levels up, it can affect a stat more. That, you know, so you're not like afraid to cast magic for fear of lowering your stats. But like, I don't know. I think the junction system could have been done better, but I also like it as it is.
I feel like I just don't get it. Like, that's, I mean, again, haven't looked at it in a long time, but like, I didn't get it. It just didn't click for me the way any other leveling within other Final Fantasies did. I totally get what you're saying though, where taking away the junction system, like, it was its own thing. So I'm not saying that it should be a job class system or it should be any other system. Final Fantasy X is my favorite upgrade system, but I feel like it's the execution again. It always comes down to that for me.
What do you have, Vagabond?
Okay, so where do I start with the junction system?
That's a great question.
Junction system, gameplay wise, that is definitely one of the more controversial things with Final Fantasy VIII. I feel like part of it has to do with the fact that Final Fantasy VII before it was a lot more of a very simple system, and all of them, probably every Final Fantasy with the exception of 2 was fairly a simple system, I guess you could say. Meanwhile, Final Fantasy VIII goes in the junction system. okay, now you gotta equip a Guardian Force, now you gotta equip magic to that Guardian Force. Oh, but you don't gain magic. Oh, you gotta draw from draw points, you gotta draw from enemies, you gotta do triple Triad cards, they introduced like quite a bit of mechanics to it. And I feel like that's probably its first point of failure is when you go from like 7 to 8 is almost like night and day. Like, even more so than something like Final Fantasy VI to Final Fantasy VII, or from Final Fantasy IV to Final Fantasy V. I feel like that kind of is kind of one of its things. On the brief note of consumable magic, or magic as like a finite resource, I feel like if it wasn't in Final Fantasy, I feel like it would have been better received. I actually do kind of like that idea, but going back to that poor execution kind of thing, magic, it does kind of work against it a little bit, where, okay, if you so much as use your magic, and if it's junctioned, now your character gets weaker. So yeah, I like that consumable magic, but at the same time, again, could have been executed better. One more thing I also do kind of feel like definitely works against Final Fantasy VIII is the fact that the levels kind of scale. So when you defeat an enemy, like, you gain XP and everything like that. And in any other RPG, your character would kind of get stronger, and like the enemies would often get weaker. Now, later games in other series and stuff like that, enemies would also have level scaling and stuff, but your character would also get stronger. Problem is, Final Fantasy VIII doesn't really so much rely on levels. It relies heavily on the junction system. So it requires your mastery of the junction system 100%. And that's partly where I, again, feel like it goes against it. If it's more like something like, say, like in past Final Fantasy games where it didn't, like, everything had a set level, and it's so you had to use the junction system to kind of overcome that, I feel like it would have been a lot better. Now, one thing I do like about the junction system is you have really good opportunity at like the very early game to kind of break it in a way, or make it really trivial to like make the whole game easy, where like, especially with the triple Triad thing. But I'm not gonna get into the whole like you can make the game really easy for yourself in the early game, but I do appreciate that there is like multiple ways of solving a problem, but I'm not a fan of kind of how it kind of throws quite a bit of it at you in the beginning.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I don't dislike it as a system. I think there's a lot of variables in the fact that like so many of the game's like other mechanics are sort of derived or stem from the junction system. It I don't know, it makes it very open-ended. It seems like there's a lot of overlap like between the abilities that you get from the GFs that for me makes me unsure of how to utilize them. I think the fact that it's not clear. I mean, I don't know. I'm sort of two minds on it, because I do think that that's the advancement system in the game, right? You can ignore leveling.
You should. There's no point.
Yeah, low level is easy mode.
So, it's there has to be some kind of growth there, and I think I don't know. I like how much is built on it. I like some of the neat abilities that you can get from it, but at the same time, I feel like there are just little changes that I would like to have seen, like fewer GFs with the same stat buffs or junction abilities, so that you have to be a little bit more particular about who's going to what. Fewer spells, I think would have been nice, because there's a lot of spells in that game. I think, I don't know, I think early on the ability to purchase spells, because I also don't dislike having the spells be consumable. And the penalty for that being that if you're going to use them, then your stats are going to go down. But the problem with that is if I want to refill, I have to grind for them, and I have to spend time in combat getting small little handfuls of spells every turn. It's very time consuming, and I think I would be a little bit more open to it if I could just like go to the store and buy a bunch of fire spells.
Yeah, I don't mind the spells being consumable, but with level scaling, I don't want to grind for the ability to use magic, and then everything is infinitely like higher level because of the level scaling. So they really deter you from wanting to use magic. Because of, I feel like all of those things connected, it's too much.
My first like full playthrough of the game, I never summoned any GFs. I never cast any spells. I only used attacks. And I was just like, I mean, most of the bosses in the game I put down in between 1 and 3 hits. You know what I mean? Like if you like Vagabond was saying, if you invest the time in acquiring all that magic and leveling up your GFs in the early game, the rest of the game is a breeze.
As long as you don't use them, yeah.
But you have to. But that's again like hours and hours and hours of fighting on a beach in the opening of the game.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean. Like
Yep.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
And like all of the triple triad. Let's get into triple triad.
I like triple triad.
I want
Same.
Triple Triad to be a standalone game, like they did with Gwent in Witcher 3.
It sort of is. I was looking up if there a triple triad like app I can play on my phone, and I know Final Fantasy has like this one app that has triple triad on it, where you can like play triple triad against like all the Final Fantasy protagonists and stuff like Squall and
Please.
Cloud and Lightning and everybody.
Please message that to me.
Same.
I need it. I need it.
If I don't have it on my phone now, but anymore, but if I'll re-find it, I will DM you guys
Please.
what the app was.
Please. I do have a triple triad show and tell.
Please.
Please.
Yes.
So I don't know if you guys have heard of KupoCon, but it is a fan-run Final Fantasy convention. It started, I want to say, in 2017-ish, maybe around there. And the first one was in New Jersey. I'm originally from New York, and my friend was vending there. So I was like, hell yeah, suited up in Orin, and I was like, let's go. So with your badge, it came with like a little swag bag, and it came with a deck of triple triad cards.
No.
And then what you could do, they had different events around the convention, and if you participated in an event, you would get like a special card. So you had a starter deck that was just like the basic cards, and then you would get some special cards. I was very lazy, so I only have one special card. Where is he? Where is he? My only special card is Red 13.
Cute.
But yeah, it's got a whole bunch. We have my girl Celeste. My
Oh,
favorite
that's
Six
amazing.
Daddy.
That is incredible.
We've got some Rinoa and Boko,
Hey.
Garland, Steiner, Beatrix, Final Fantasy IV Sid. An
Delightful.
interesting
Oh, yeah!
choice.
Sid!
An interesting
Yes!
Sid choice. 'Cause
Love
when I
this
think
guy.
When I think Sid, I instantly think 7. But they gave us 4. Loved that. We've got our main man, Kefka, Gilgamesh, Fran, my girl Lulu, Cactuar. I've got an Ifrit. But yeah, they had millions of them. The starter deck was like 15 cards, and then I got like the one extra.
Oh, that's amazing.
But yeah, so like a handful of people like did their fan art of each of the characters. This is Ramza from Tactics.
Whoop.
But yeah, so it was the coolest little thing, and I was like, now I have a little deck of Triple Triad, but I freaking love Triple Triad. It's my favorite mini game in
Wow.
all of Final Fantasy.
Wow.
It's my second favorite.
What's your first favorite?
What's your first? Don't say
Chocobo Hot
Squats.
and Cold
That's a good one.
What is
from
it?
9.
Which one was it?
From 9, Chocobo Hot and Cold. I would
Oh, okay,
literally,
that
when
one
I
is
was
good
in
too.
like late middle, early high school, I would wake up like, Saturday morning. I would just like boot up my completed 9 save file and just play Chocobo Hot and Cold for fun. I
Aw.
want
I
a
love that.
standalone of that.
I
Like
love
Triple
Final
Triad,
Fantasy
yes,
9.
absolutely. But I also want a standalone Chocobo Hot and Cold, like as a full fleshed out game and like with a little mini world map you could go dig up treasures on as well.
Oh, that sounds delightful.
I think that would be neat.
That would be cute, actually. I would play that.
I have a problem.
9 also needs a remake. But 9 needs a remake for a completely different reason from all these other... 9 felt very... It came out at a bad time.
For the world or for you?
For the world. No, not for me. I love 9. 9, in my opinion, is one of the best made. My cat is very into this.
I
It's
love-
in my top 5.
Yeah, I love 9 is tied for first for me.
9, I feel, is very unsung, but it's because of the timeline. It's the last one to come out on PS1, and almost a year to the day, Final Fantasy X came out a year later.
Yeah,
It
Final
didn't
Fantasy
have
9 was kind of
time.
Final Fantasy 9 was kind of sandwiched in between 8 and 10. Like
It had
Final
no
Fantasy
time.
8 came out, then a year later Final Fantasy 9 came out, then a year later Final Fantasy 10 came out. So
Yeah.
Is
they
that-
only have enough time to grow.
Is that when
Also,
they
10 is the first one on PS2, and it looked visually
Yeah, it's-
much more advanced than 9. So if
yeah.
you didn't play 9 when it first came out, you forgot about it really quickly. So I just feel like 9 didn't have its time that it deserved, because I freaking love 9. I love it so much. I think it's one of the best stories in the mainline Final Fantasy games. And I know so many people who have not played it.
It is the biggest love letter to classic Final Fantasy. I adore that game so
yeah,
much.
it's gorgeous. I think it's nearly perfect. Yeah.
One day I'll get 100 approval on that sword fight in the beginning.
No, the jump rope is my white whale. So I have a bone to pick with with Final Fantasy card games, because I have the same problem with 9 in that I do so much supplemental reading about how these card games work, and I just don't get it. And I'm so bad at it. And so in addition to just not really being an effective Triple Triad player, I also am infuriated by the rules changes. What?
Yeah,
Oh
sorry.
no, I was gonna say, yeah, I agree with you that the rule changes are kind of infuriating, especially when you specifically really like one of the rules, but it's only available in one specific part, and then if I recall correctly, if you play it enough, then the rule eventually changes. I think that's how it went.
Sort of. I can go pretty in depth about how the rules in 8 work in Triple Triad. Each region has its own rules. When you play from one region to another, you can change the rules, either spread a rule you're carrying that the region didn't have, or if you're or if RNG likes you enough, abolish a rule that existed. I spend an inordinate amount of time when I'm playing through 8 getting rid of random everywhere, and it takes a lot of save scumming and resets, but it can be done. You can abolish random globally. But it is very frustrating. Like, if you know, like, the properties of carrying a rule versus what region you're carrying, you can prevent random from spreading. Like, if you say no enough times to, do you want to mix rules? You're carrying Dalit's rule set, and that has random in it. And if you say no enough times, they'll just be like, do you just want to play cards? And then you're no longer spreading random everywhere. And then conversely, if you're playing in Dalit enough, you try to mix rules, you can eventually get rid of random. It's harder to abolish a rule than spread a rule, but yeah, there's a way to do it, but it's not intuitive at all. I will fully admit that is one that came from guides and stuff. But yeah, no, I also didn't like a lot of the rule changes in
I
between
kind
regions.
of like the idea behind it, where it's kind of like house rules,
Hmm.
where like no one plays Monopoly by the correct
Mhm.
rules, like you all have
No.
or like Uno.
Oh, yeah.
If you've ever
Oh,
read
yeah,
the
definitely.
official rules of Uno, I'm like, these are stupid. This is not how we play. You have house rules of how you play certain things, so it's kind of the same thing. And then you go to another region, you're in another house. They have different house rules. So I kind of like the idea behind that,
Same.
but for a video game, it's again like a weird choice for a game.
Yeah. Oh. Getting music from somewhere.
I don't have anything going on.
That's weird. What's happening to me?
What's the music?
It's like epic music. Like it's jam.
I'm like checking. I'm like, all of my tabs are muted.
I don't know what it is. It's gone now.
I had Balam garden music for like 1 hour playing on a loop while I was listening to it, or while they were discussing. That's that.
I can't hear anything.
It was so weird. It started. I have an ad that just started, and it kind of kicked off at the same time. But my ads are not playing for me. I'm not seeing the ads, and my stream is muted, so I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Anyway, it was very distracting, but it's gone now.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I really like the idea that each region has its own rules, and I think the part that makes me absolutely froth at the mouth is how like invisible a lot of it is, and the random nature of what the game presents you with. I don't know. Like Dove said, a lot of saves coming and resetting, and it gets old. But it just makes it a game that I already struggle to understand even more difficult to understand. Because even sometimes I'm like, oh, this is the rule that I want, but then nope, it wasn't at all. It doesn't happen.
And then they're
the way
like,
I
oh,
think.
but
Yeah.
not in the next region.
Yeah, right. Totally. Yeah. Just kidding. It's actually going to make it even more difficult to understand. But yeah, I don't know. I could not make heads or tails of Triple Triad. I don't understand. I think I'm better at Triple Triad than I am with card game from Final Fantasy IX.
Tetramaster.
Tetramaster. Because that's got a lot more like variables, if I remember correctly.
I will play Final Fantasy card games before I play a Blitzball tournament. So
I mean,
I'll
same.
play Blitzball before Tetramaster, but
I'm nervous for Rebirth for that reason. Oh, please don't do this to me again.
I don't know, man. They made the squat game really easy in remake, so maybe things will be easier in the 7 remake line.
I hope so. I just can't. I can't. At least in 9, Tetramaster is only mandatory for like 20 minutes.
Yeah, I think they started doing that after 8. People
Yeah.
probably were like, what the hell is this? Because even in 10, like, you only have to play one Blitzball game. You never have to play it after that.
Yeah, like your
Unless you
your
want Waka's
success in filling
Ultimate.
in completing this game is no longer reliant on your ability to pick up this card game.
I have dodged lightning 200 times. I have never gotten Waka's ultimate weapon because no, I refuse.
I have gotten Waka's ultimate weapon multiple
sorry.
times. I've dodged lightning once. I like, God, 200 random events
200 in a row.
In a row. You can't get hit. You can't stand under a lightning tower. You can't go see how many you have. And, sometimes they can happen 2 or 3 times in a row. Sometimes they won't happen for like a minute. Blitzball, I can like build a team. I can just put brother on my team and just sit behind the enemy goalpost forever.
Terrible. Blitzball gives me like PTSD. I can't even win the tutorial game.
Well, you don't have. Yeah.
The tutorial game is, I will soapbox about 10 some other time, but the tutorial game is not a good way to teach you how to play Blitzball.
My understand.
Yeah,
I've never tried to play recreational Blitzball, but my understanding is that it's way more manageable than the story sequence. Because
Yeah, it's all like a statistics game.
I just get battered in that tutorial.
But
So
yeah, Final Fantasy mini games.
yeah, it's a whole thing. I created a bullet point for side quests in Final Fantasy VIII. I don't remember why, and
I don't remember side quests.
I think there's a lot. I know there's a lot, and they're not necessarily all that telegraphed. And Duvet, you have a much more intimate knowledge than I do, for sure. But two stick out to me. One is doing anything to do with the Shumi village, which you don't ever have to go to. But there's actually quite a bit there, including Ultima, right? And then the something to do with chocobos, where you have to go into like a forest and grind for Malboros or something.
The Marlboro thing ties into Doom Train or getting Quistis' ultimate weapon. The chocobos and the chocobo forest isn't really related to Marlboros.
Maybe I'm just. This is
chocobo
from
forest
years
was
ago.
like
I didn't
a
do any
weird-
of this stuff on my most recent playthrough, so my memory of the side quest stuff is a lot very foggy.
So the chocobo forest, they're like, I want to say 6 or 7 around the world map. You go in and you play this weird, unintuitive hot and cold style thing with whistles, and if you if you succeed, you get a chocobo, and then you could treasure hunt in the completed forest to have that chocobo unlocked permanently, and then you do that to like all the forests, and you get like a specific card. I think it's the Chicobo card. And you can just like have chocobos, which is kind of a moot point because by the time you can start finding these chocobo forests, you have a de facto airship. But the Shumi village thing is relatively self-contained. It's just a lot of Laguna backstory, and it is the earliest point where you can draw Ultima just at like a cost of 5,000 gil per draw.
Yes.
So it's a lot of money and takes a lot of time for that draw point to respawn. A lot of the side quests are just kind of really off the beaten path. Like if you read the magazines and go into the lore, they're hints, but a lot of them are just kind of there. There's a lot of really obscure ones on the world map. Like there's a lake outside of Timber where you can skip rocks, and that leads to a whole thing.
Obel Lake?
Obel Lake, yeah. There's just random spots on the world map that have random drop points or random little mini events. There's the UFO Pew Pew side quest. There's stuff in Windhill that doesn't really give a reward, but it's a neat little thing. They're just kind of neat little things sprinkled in, but like really subtle and subdued for a Final Fantasy in terms of side quests.
So, like, as a general question, I'm curious to know: do you prefer to have your side content like really just laid out for you, or do you prefer like a sort of an open world where there are locations that aren't pinned on your map, no one's telling you to go there, and you just like discover stuff?
Yes.
Yeah. That's kind of what I thought.
I think I kind of agree with that. It really depends on the game. Because I've seen both ways done well. I play a lot of open world games. Open world action adventure is like, that is my bread and butter, I would say. Certain games, thinking like a Skyrim, where there's so many fetch quests, everything's a fetch quest. That map is so huge. If you are not telling me where to go, I am not getting your bracelet from the well. It is just not happening. Like it. So with Skyrim, when someone's like, "I lost my bracelet, can you get it?" and then it's like 75 miles east of where you're standing. For a game like that, I need to know a general area of where I need to go. But for games that are a little more still like an open world but smaller map, or maybe I'm thinking like Final Fantasy 16 where it's got multiple little maps on the side quests, and they'll say, "Hey, something happened on this map, like in this town," and then you would go to the town and try to find it. You're still left in a big map with few clues, and I think that kind of worked well too. So it really depends on the game's setting and their map system and all of that. But I think they both work well. They both can work well. They both have the potential to work well. It really depends on the game itself, though, and how it's set up. I don't want to be walking around aimlessly where someone is like, "Hey, there's this thing that I heard about. Bye." And then you're like, "Where do I go? Like,
Yeah.
what is that? Where were you when you heard that?" Like, I need some direction.
Did you hear that from
know?
a reputable source?
Yeah.
I want to give room for Vagabond to reply before I go into mine.
What's that?
I just wanted to give you room to talk if you wanted to about this.
Oh, okay. So I'm kind of in the same boat as Peachy with the side quests. I do kind of like both. It does depend on the execution. I guess I could say I lean again also more on the side of I kind of like having it kind of told to me. I would like to bring up briefly the Final Fantasy VIII achievement list, or at least some of the achievements on here. Namely, the complete the Obel Lake side quest and the complete the Poo Poo side quest. Sometimes things that aren't in the game, like achievements, for example, can kind of lead me in a direction as to, okay, where is this? What's this? Who is Poo Poo? What's the Obel Lake? Like stuff like that, I guess. So, I guess to conclude, what I'm saying is, it does depend on the execution. But I do kind of like having something to guide me, or something to kind of prime the, okay, there's a thing somewhere and I gotta go find it. I guess in a way it actually doesn't help that a lot of the locations that aren't like unmarked locations in Final Fantasy VIII are just kind of, they kind of tend to blend in a lot, I feel.
Yeah.
So I like both. Like, my yes wasn't just a little silly meme answer, but I like both. Like, for example, in the context of like Final Fantasy V, where it's like, you're going through the main plot, and it's like, at some point, Bahamut is just like, "Hey, I'll fight you. Just come meet me at this mountain. Meet me behind this shed at 3:00, and we'll fight." And it's very direct, and it tells you where and what. But also, in the same generalized RPG context, I like talking to a random NPC, be like, "Hey, the forest is kind of haunted," and then like you just run around the forest and find something.
But it's at least giving you a clue to go to the forest. Like, you have some kind of direction for a general idea of where to go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then even more broad, I like just sometimes running around a map or running around a location, like a world map in a Final Fantasy, and just tripping over something feels magical. Like, am I the first person to discover this? Like, this is really cool. I like it in all scales. I like being told, "Hey, this is a side content you can go do for this reward." And then I like, vague little guidance of, go west, go explore. And then I like the ones that I can just like trip over that don't necessarily have a tangible reward necessarily, but just like exist. In FF8's context, things like Obel Lake and Pew Pew kind of make the world feel a little more alive. Because if I'm running around the world map and suddenly, hey, there's this weird looking lake. I wonder if there's anything here, like a drop point, and then I can skip rocks on it. Like, it's so weird, and it's just like kind of rabbit holes. And I like stuff like that. But I wouldn't want it tied to an achievement. but I definitely like, something like that existing, making the world, feel like there's more in it than just the towns. And for unmarked locations, like the dungeon or whatever at the corner of the world map doesn't have a dot on it, and places like that, I adore those. If you put me in an RPG that has a world map and I eventually get an airship and I can take that to the corner of the world and there's a thing there, I'm really happy.
Yeah. I think they all have their place and they all have the potential to be well done. I think all three of those things succeeding heavily are like heavily reliant on how mapping in that world works.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that's but I've played games. It's a little frustrating coming from an open world RPG mind and then playing an action adventure game with no map.
Yeah.
God of War Ragnarok, I'm looking at you. They only have an overworld map, so the second you're in an area, you're like, where do I go? I don't understand. Did I just come from this way or do I go that way? It's frustrating to navigate that. But if I can pull up a map and look and say, you know what? They said it was by a lake. There's a lake over there, or there's something that could be a lake over there. Let's go that way. Then I'm totally fine with just a mild direction and then just walk around and figure it out. And those also tend to be the places where you maybe didn't talk to the NPC to tell you, oh, you have to go that way. So you end up stumbling upon another side quest, which I also do like. But yeah, it's heavily reliant on what the mapping system in the game itself looks like. But I think they all have the potential to be great side quest mechanics.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really have a preference for any one over the other.
That's why I said yes
Yeah.
to the question, broad strokes, because it's
I totally agree.
I kind of want a mix of all of them to some degree.
Yeah.
To some degree, yeah, I agree with that. I think where I sort of draw the line is locations that are very obscure, and I've also not been given any direction. Like the haunted forest thing was a great example. It's forests all over the place. So if there's one that's haunted, I would like to be rewarded for talking to NPCs by having one of them say, "Oh, that forest is interesting. You should check that out." Whereas, like, if there's no direction whatsoever, then I'm a little bit annoyed. Like, the game never even told me. I'm a Capricorn, and so I would like the rules to be stated clearly. I don't prefer to happen upon things by like whimsically strolling around. But unless it's something that really sticks out, like one thing that I'm remembering from my recent playthrough is the Centra ruins, which I completely forgot about, and I happened upon them while I was looking for the White Seed ship, and they stick out like a sore thumb. And they're very alluring. That's fine. If it's something that's like, that makes itself obvious and you're like, oh, what is that? I am attracted. That's different. But if it's just like something that really just blends in, I kind of take issue with that. On the other hand,
Yeah.
There have been times where I have stumbled across stuff and there's a very pleasant, unique thrill that you get from, this is a thing.
What? Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
What's
This
that?
forest isn't just texture. It's actually a location, even though I didn't have a waypoint.
Or sometimes you're like, oh no, why am I here? I need to leave.
Yeah, right.
It kind of rewards just kind of wandering about, I guess, is the allure for me.
Yeah.
Is if I'm just like wandering about and I have encounters turned off or some other way to mitigate them and I can just walk around the world map or fly around and just, I have found a thing.
Yeah.
That wasn't telegraphed at all. It's shiny.
I'm willing to admit that I am wrong, in my opinion. because
I'm really picky about the walking around whimsically though.
Yeah.
Like it's got to be a tiny map. I'm not walking around this gigantic world map just wondering
like
what's out there.
when you
can't.
said it really
I'm
depends on what
patience.
the map system is, and that really rings true because something like Final Fantasy VIII or VII or something where there's a world map, but my expectation is that there's going to be some sort of direction given to me by someone. Either it's on the map itself and there's points that I can follow, even if I don't know what it is. Oh, there's an island way out there, but there's a thing on it. Gotta check it out.
Six had a lot of that.
Yeah, totally. Or someone's
A lot
gonna
of that where it was like there's a weird thing southeast of here and you're like, okay.
yeah, guess I'm gonna go look at it. Or someone to pull my focus towards the extra stuff. But when my map is mostly just textures and barren random encounters, I get itchy. Even just thinking like, I am sure there's something here to discover, and I'm just gonna have to spend time walking up and down through forests and fields to find it. Versus, if I'm playing like an open action adventure, like I spent like hundreds of hours playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and I would do that.
Game is so good.
I would just roam and find stuff, and it's cool because there's landmarks that like stick out to you, and you recognize patterns and things to look for and stuff like that. And I feel like some of those mid 90s RPGs are a little bit lost on it. Even like the ones before that, if there's obscure locations, generally there's something about them, or you're walking on tiles, and so it's a little bit easier to know where you've been and where you haven't.
Yeah, there'd be something like a little twinkly, a little bit different to be like, what is that? That looks a little strange.
Yeah. Or like there's like a
I
rock
do think,
formation
like,
here that kind of looks like it's calling itself out.
Yeah, or like the original Zelda where you'd have that one bush is brown. Why is that one brown?
Yeah,
All the other ones are green.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, so it would always have something a little bit different. And now, because games are so ingrained in reality, visually at least, they can be hidden a little better, but it's like I'm a big Assassin's Creed fan. I've played them all, but
Nice.
they definitely
Hey, Flamesaber.
don't necessarily do anything different, but you just like notice a pattern, like, oh, this is just the Assassin's Creed thing, or like, hey, that's a really high tower. I bet I can synchronize with that point. Like, that's really high up there. Kind of things like it's just one of those things you learn with the game, because they make things a little more seamless with the rest of the environment. But yeah, the old school RPGs, they always have some kind of twinkly difference hiding in there that you can just be like, what's that?
Yeah.
I gotta check that out. That looks weird.
Yeah, Flamesaber, we're just having a little bit of a conversation about some of the pros and cons of Final Fantasy VIII. Vagabond, you got anything else on that topic?
No, I don't have anything else new to add, unfortunately.
That's fine. You don't have to. I have exactly one thing left. So before I get to that, does anybody else have anything else about Final Fantasy VIII that they would like to hammer out? Any grievances?
This is gonna sound so okay. Vagabond, you go first. I feel like I talk so much.
Same.
I was mean to say this during when we were talking about Squall. I think his gunblade looks cool.
Do you know his gunblade looks so cool that they were like, lightning, do you want one also?
So
They
cool
literally
they did
were
it twice.
just like, she can also have that. They're just reusing weapons. The gunblade makes no sense. I don't understand how the blade doesn't get in the way of the bullets, but I like it anyway.
Yeah,
I don't care.
I'm not asking questions.
That's where fantasy mind is like, don't think about the bullets. They're probably fine.
This is where my analytical brain fails. I think it's less firing a bullet out of the gun in FF8's context and more creating a shockwave through a gunpowder explosion, but how that doesn't shatter the blade kind of.
Oh,
That's where I just
Saying
go,
it
you know
makes
what?
no
Rule of cool.
sense.
Yeah.
Rule of cool.
Yeah, that's-
Gunblade is cool.
That
That's where
makes
fantasy mind goes. Just ignore the physics of it all. It's great.
well. That makes sense too
I can't
because
analyze it.
the gunblade does not take ammo, but Irvine's gun does take ammo.
Because his gun is
First-
like a gun.
Yeah.
It's
I mean,
like
it doesn't-
shotgun, but
it doesn't,
also
it doesn't.
Rifle, but also sniper.
Yeah.
My only comment, and it's anytime I meet someone that's like, I love Final Fantasy VIII, it's my favorite. I'm like, okay, listen. The whole plot line, the origination of the magic, only sorceresses can use magic, and they're all women. And then Seed was like,
That's
actually, until it's not, because Seed was like, no, we're gonna teach men how to use magic because women can't have anything. Can you just leave us with our magic and leave us alone? No,
See,
men have to
wanna-
also be able to have the magic too. So they're like, no. Through Guardian Forces, you too can be a magic wielder. This is not for women anymore. And that's the only comment I had that we didn't touch upon. Can women have anything? Honestly.
For real. I want to debate the factual nature of magic in Final Fantasy VIII, but the spirit of that, I can't. I can't just no. Women can
Every time I say it, because it's always a man that is like, I love Final Fantasy VIII. That's my favorite. I've never met a woman who said Final Fantasy VIII is her favorite ever.
Interesting.
It's always a man that says it, and I'm always like, can women have anything? Leave us and our magic alone.
It's like technically the magic that is being used by everybody who equips a GF is actually just paramagic. Real magic
Right.
only comes from sorceresses. So realistically, women actually have actual magic, and everyone else just has like this Temu
Knockoff.
magic they got online.
Shein. You and your Shein magic.
I got my
Yeah.
magic off Wish, and it's not great.
Exactly. But women have the authentic, organic, grass.
Because the men just need to also have magic.
It's just.
So
It's-
that's
it's
always my
less
funny
than-
little comment about that. But yeah, I always thought that was the weird plot point where they were like, no magic, no, you can't use magic, and then there's so much magic, and I'm like, okay, like,
Magic everywhere. My pockets are full of magic. I can't fit any more magic.
gotta start using it.
Yeah, right.
Sitting on 100 magics right now.
You'll be extremely weak, but you could also use magic.
My cup is overflowing. Dove, any last comments, any topics from you?
It depends if that last bullet point is Squall is dead or not.
It is.
Okay, then. Several cutscenes will play in sequence.
Okay, so I need a little more info on the Squall is dead stuff, though. Because I've only read a little bit of it, and it makes no sense and sounds so stupid to me.
Okay. All right. Before that, Dove, did you have a thing?
I don't think I have anything
Okay.
really extra to add to it. It was basically the Squall is dead theory that
Okay.
I wanted to scream about.
Okay. Then my last question for the group is Squall dead?
No.
Oh,
If Squall is dead, Laguna's entire storyline is stupid. Like, pointless.
I mean, it's,
For real, though.
Like, it doesn't make sense.
yeah, I don't.
I also just, I mean, we've touched upon quite a bit about how the storytelling execution of this game is whack and like just is badly done. So Squall being dead, using that's the worst plot. Like that, it was all a dream plot. Get out of here. I hate it. I hate
Thank
it.
you.
It was all a dream. We already have Amnesia, which is also a bad story plot point. We can't have both of them in
So
one
many.
game. It's dumb.
It's just my favorite soap opera.
Yeah, Amnesia and it was all a dream. We can't have them both.
It was all a
Stop.
dream I couldn't remember.
Because
No.
I was dead. So I think, all right. I love playing with theories. I don't necessarily dabble in fan theorizing myself, but I'll do a little analytics. I took college courses. And so I was intrigued when I first heard that theory. And I had it in mind while playing. I had heard the theory before I finished the game for the first time. So I had that in my mind. And I couldn't stop thinking about it the whole time I was playing through the second time. And I want to say with confidence that it just doesn't hold any water. Like, not even to the degree that I can see it. I don't believe that it's true, but I can see it. I can't see it. Who? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Why would you ever?
I will very much go last here because several cutscenes will play in sequence moment.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear a little bit more. And Vagabond, you had kind of a little bit of a in between response. So I'm curious where you're landing on this. Maybe you were trying to feel out the room.
Yeah, I guess you could say I was feeling out the room here. I mean, after all, if Squall really is dead, what would the point in being like the remaining 3 discs? All you need is this one then. But yeah, I don't know. Most of the time, I don't really buy into fan theories very much, and with the Squall is dead theory, it just seems a little bit ridiculous, I guess you could say. I mean, makes me wonder what the intent behind it is. How did they was that them trying to rationalize all the somewhat nonsensical ideas that were poorly executed in the game, or was that because Squall fell at the end of disc 1 and something like that? So yeah, I don't fully buy into the Squall is dead theory, unfortunately.
Is that the theory? Is that when he fell, he died?
I forget what happened specifically.
Adea casts her ice spell, and it plunges deep into his chest, and then he falls.
It impales his shoulder.
Yeah, it's meant to be through his shoulder, but I mean, I can see that, especially if you're not watching it, if you're just thinking about your memory of that cutscene, how it looks like it just goes through his whole one side of his torso.
Okay.
And then and then he falls off the parade float. Everything goes black, and then he wakes up in the hospital. And
that's the theory, is that he doesn't wake up in the hospital. He actually just dies.
Yeah.
Prison, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's stupid.
Right.
No.
And so I think what people generally point to is that there's a noticeable shift in the tone of the story and also several of the characters. That's sort of the point where a lot of the more wild stuff in the plot kind of starts to happen. That's sort of around the time that Rinoa shifts from being focused on what Cypher's doing to what Squall is doing. And I think what Vagabond said, I think that's sort of people just trying to justify why there's so much ridiculousness. Go ahead.
Okay, this one's more of a criticism of the theory itself, but I kind of noticed in several games and movies and stuff where they do have a very similar theory as to Squall is dead. Main character goes unconscious, wakes up, something different, sort of, even if it's minor. Okay, instant theory. Character is actually dead when he gets unconscious at the beginning of movie or game or something like that. So I guess
Sixth Sense really ruined.
God, and that was the time period, wasn't it?
Yeah.
When did that come out?
97, 98.
Okay, so around the same time as
Yeah. Hold on. 99.
Yeah.
Wait, Sixth Sense came out in 99. Yeah, there you go.
And there's a lot of stuff Lost is one too. Lost is everyone's dead.
Oh my god.
Yeah, Lost was what, 2006, 7? I watched the hell out of Lost.
Oh my god,
but that is
I
not a
love me some
rewatchable
Lost.
show. Once you watch the end, you're done.
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I feel like, is that what it is? Like the Sixth Sense came out, and then everyone was like, "Yeah, that's it. That's the conspiracy theory for everything now." Come on,
I,
man.
I was not online in the late 90s or really even the early 2000s, so I'm not really clear
Me
as to
either.
when that theory popped up.
Yeah. I didn't have a computer until like 2002 or 3.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's dumb. It falls in line with it was all a dream. They
Yeah.
had amnesia. And I'm like, I don't like it. It's like the worst, most boring trope. But it really doesn't, you were saying like it doesn't hold water, and like my biggest thing is like Laguna existing makes no sense then. That for me, Laguna shouldn't be here at all.
Why?
Because what's the point?
Well, what's the point? Right. Yeah. I just don't think that there's any sometimes it's fun to just shift your perspective and think like I'm going to experience this story, but like if I go through the rest of it thinking that this is some dying fever dream in Squall's head, then that'll be a neat thing. And it's not. It just doesn't work. I don't think it tracks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I do like the idea of like, ooh, a conspiracy theory, but then the second I find a plot hole in that, I'm like, well, that was garbage. Bye.
Yeah.
There's too many plot holes in that, I think, for that to be true.
I watched.
And I feel like the reasoning is so flimsy.
Yeah. I watched Titanic last year. And I went through the whole thing intentionally perceiving Jack as a trans man. And it gave me so much. It was such a rewarding experience.
Wait, why though?
Just why not? It's just
Why
like
not?
it's just a shift. It's a new way to experience the story. It
perspective. Got it.
adds
Okay.
it adds interesting, like, it frames the character choices in different ways and their relationships and stuff, and it's neat. It's just a neat thing. I
was thinking that was a fan theory, and I'm like, I don't understand that fan theory. That makes no sense. So I'm like, where did that come from? But okay, no, that makes sense to just be like,
yeah.
give yourself like, add a little character spice in there to be like, no, let's see if this changes the story anyway.
Yeah, I don't think it's a fan theory that Jack is trans, but I do think that there is a fan theory that exists that Jack is meant to be allegorical.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Which,
That
fine,
makes
yeah,
sense.
sure. And I got something out of that, and it was neat. I didn't get something out of Squall being dead. I thought it was dumb. I'm dying to know what Dove has to say.
So, I want to say the theory, I could be wrong, it originated from game theory. And I could very well be wrong. Maybe the theory was floated before Matt Pat got to it. I don't know. When it comes to things like that, it goes into the territory of what ifs. And I like to delve into those myself. Like, what if Ramza had obeyed orders and stayed guarding Aegros Castle in tactics instead of going to Dorter? But they're not canon. They're neat little stories that, could come from existing molds and materials in the world that was. My problem with Squall is Dead is that it wasn't ever presented that way as, this is a neat
what
way
if.
to, re-experience. This is, what if Squall had died there and that was the rest of the thing? Because then you could look at it like, okay, what if? Okay, then this makes sense. Then this doesn't. It becomes fun to think about. It was presented as fact by a number of people on the internet for a long time. And probably, I think Game Theory did a video on it, whether they originated it or not. But the problem with things like that is they're presented as, no, this is the truth. This is how the nonsense of the plot makes sense. Not just ignore the holes we've dug up and created more plot holes in trying to fix the ones we perceive. And it becomes trying to present a thing as fact when it isn't. The writers and creators of Final Fantasy VIII have come out in interviews to say, no, that is not canon. they would have to write the story with that in mind from the beginning in order to make it make sense. Like, I think one of the producers said it was a neat theory, but word of God, it is not canon. And it's just my problem with Squall is Dead is it was presented as fact to be a point of criticism against the plot of 8 for so long that it just kind of ground my gears into dust. And so
that's weird.
I'm very competitive when that theory is floated as fact. Now, if it's floated as here's a neat way to alternatively look at a plot through an alternate lens, I'll be all about that. I love what ifs. I love, watching Titanic with the perspective of Jack as a trans man. I love that stuff, but knowing in my heart and presenting openly, transparently that this is just my take. This is how I would write with these parameters. This is, my what ifery. This is not canon, but this is, fun fan theorying. And I think fan theorying is fantastic. I think it's wonderful. But Squall is Dead, like, it was so pushed as fact and canon to the point where producers and developers had to come out and say, no, it's not in interviews. Is how prevalent that was for such a long time. I think since those interviews came out, the pushing of it as canon has since fallen off. But like during my middle and high school years on the internet, it was floated as fact with evidence, quote unquote. And then game theory, didn't help. And it's like it's fun to think about, but that's not how the story was written. Yeah, and that's where it is for me. Sorry,
I like how you mentioned that it is in a what if scenario, you would be playing through and being like, well, if that was true, then this wouldn't happen. It would probably happen like this. And I feel like media has done. I mean, Marvel just did 2 years ago their what if show of like, what if this happened instead of this? And one of the most famous Superman stories of all time is Red Sun Superman, and it's what if Superman crash landed in Soviet Russia instead of the US? Like, would he be different? Would he have the same morals? Like, that's one of the most famous Superman stories ever told, and it is a what if. It's just like a fun little non-canon way to like reframe something, to be like, oh, I wonder what would be different if something else had happened. So framing it as fact, I totally get why that's like, it's absurd, because there's no way. There's so many plot holes. There's so many things that just don't make sense and wouldn't happen if that were true. But if you look at it in the what if way, you would say, okay, if this were true, if this actually happened and he died there instead, then this would probably happen instead, and this would probably happen instead, and it wouldn't be like shoehorning these things that happened to be like, no, this fits my theory because I do like the what if framing though, but it's got to be framed that way.
It's got to be framed that way. I didn't know the origin of that theory, so thank you for that explanation, Dove. And I think
I could very well be wrong, by the way.
I'm going to assume you're not.
Like,
I'll believe you.
Like, I don't want to sit here and spew misinformation on the internet. I could be pulling things like out of thin air. I absolutely could be.
Dove is correct though?
Yeah.
And that's just how it
That's
was.
my fan theory. So I think like, it's offensive that anyone would just claim that as fact. But also B, it's just not an interesting theory, and to me, and I think the biggest reason why is because there's nothing there to theorize. The what if Squall is dead? The answer to that question is, if Squall is dead, then there's no stakes and none of this matters. You know what I mean? Like
75% of these discs are pointless.
Yeah. Then I've just wasted 60 hours of my life.
Yeah.
And I hate it. Well, great. I don't have anything else. I super appreciate the three of you joining me today. You've all been an absolute joy.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
and it's just been super nice chatting with you. You've helped me in my journey to figure out if I like Final Fantasy VIII or not.
Or do you?
So I
$1 million question.
We're still unsure.
Yeah. I do. I think everything that we hit upon today, the overarching theme was this would have been good if they'd just done it better.
Bad execution, yeah.
You know?
Oh yeah.
But like I said, the late 90s was a highly experimental time for gaming, you know, and there's a lot of stone cold classics that either just don't really hold up from a modern lens, or that have very obvious flaws that we choose to look past. Right?
Yeah.
And
I will say, this conversation's actually helped me. I know that now when I do play Final Fantasy VIII again, I am going to have a much more open mind, because talking about all of the things I don't like about this game, they all boil down to execution. Every single thing I don't like about this game is purely execution, and just some characters are annoying, but that's every Final Fantasy. They all have annoying characters. It's just part of the formula. But yeah, so I think now I'm going to have a much more open mind when I do finally replay it. That maybe be like, you know what? Yeah, the execution of this sucked, but it doesn't necessarily mean the story is bad.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the storytelling is bad.
You just need to help it out a little bit. Give it some space and some forgiveness, and maybe, you know, have that Wikipedia article open.
I would say maybe like the Junction papers.
Yeah.
Some info on that, because I don't freaking know. That didn't make any sense to me back in the day. So.
Yeah. So ultimately, I think I have trouble, because even though I've sort of had these revelations about 8 and I've gained so much more of an appreciation for it, I think it's still bottom 2 with 10. And I had the I had the exact same experience with 10 that I did with 8, where I played it when it came out and I hated it, and then decades later, I replayed it and I learned I don't hate this, but there are enough things about it that I don't love that it's just not my favorite. And
there are so many things about 10 that I don't love, and it's still my favorite. Like, in spite of all the things I hate, I'm like, I still love it.
That's fair.
But playing 10 as an adult was very different than playing it as, what was it, 13, 14?
Yeah, for sure.
Riku, I got a lot more perspective as an adult on Riku. She's still annoying. Her voice is grating and awful. But that whole scene with Home, that just went over my head as a kid, and seeing it as an adult, I was like, holy crap.
Yeah.
That is terrible. Final Fantasy X is just a big depression spiral. But it's all like pretty and cute looking. And it's terrible. All of it is sad.
Yeah. I'll tell you the two things that really saved 10 for me in the end were, one, seeing the resolution of Tidus's story, because almost everything about him that I couldn't stand, it makes sense to me now. Except I just wish he would shut up. I just don't like how shouty and like annoying his voice is.
Oh my
but
god,
like,
yell talks the whole time.
But like I get it. I mean, me at the end when that final confrontation happens is like, I understand now. And the other thing that saved it for me is it's Yuna is the main character of that story. Throw Tidus in the garbage.
I don't even really like her that much.
Okay, well I
think she's just okay.
That's another podcast.
I'm about to
Sure.
podcast like every single Final Fantasy at this point.
It's Lulu. Lulu is with a man because he looks like his dead brother. She doesn't even like that man.
She does not.
I'm like,
Can't
Lulu's the
stand him.
best.
It was the best. Every time you complain about belts, Nomura's just going to add more. So
Makes them more powerful. All right. Well, let's start wrapping things up. I would love Vagabond and Peachy and Dove in that order for convenience. You know, talk about your stuff. What do you do? When are you doing it? What do you got going on?
Oh, so hi, I'm Vagabond J, and welcome back to Vagabond J Does Things. That's kind of my shtick. I'm a variety streamer. Like Captain Stick Figure. I am pointing at him, right? Okay, but
There you go.
I think over here, Captain Stick Figure. I'm also a variety streamer. I kind of dip my toes into a few things. Right now, I'm playing Legend of Zelda: Wind Waker. I'm streaming on Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I believe that is 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Is that correct?
correct.
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Yeah, I guess that's about it. 3 facts about myself, and that'll be my introduction, is I'm also a cosplayer. I am a video game addict, and I drove a forklift, but I'm not forklift certified.
Nice.
Fantastic.
Living life on the edge.
Am I next?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. My name is Marie or Peachy. I'm a variety streamer, but mostly open world, action, adventure, RPG. I like a good story. If it's a good story and looks like crap, I'll still play it. Like, I don't even care. I'm also a cosplayer. I've been cosplaying since 2009. I'm currently working on a Huntress version, fan art version of Rosalina from Super Mario Brothers. I should really get that started because that's got to be worn in a couple of months and there's nothing done. The true cosplayer way. I have also cosplayed Orin and Lulu from Final Fantasy X. That's my Orin sword. I love him. And I stream Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern. I also was just made an official Ubisoft content creator, and tomorrow I am streaming Skull and Bones in a pirate cosplay, because why am I going to play a pirate game without being a pirate?
Fair.
So we're doing that for launch day, 'cause tomorrow's it launches officially tomorrow. So that's what I've been up to. That's my shtick.
Good stuff.
That sword is awesome, by the way.
Thank you.
I think it looks like perfect.
It weighs about 2 pounds.
Oh, nice.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's
Nice.
hollow.
What's up, everyone? Hi, hello. I'm Dove. I am a queer retro RPG challenge run streamer primarily. Mostly classic Final Fantasy challenge runs like No Sphere Grid, Final Fantasy X. I did Magic Only, FF7. I play a bunch of tactics. And tomorrow I am starting a Chrono Cross challenge run. I'm doing what is known as the Black Coffee Run. It's something that my friend Effector of Change linked to me on Reddit. It has a laundry list of rules and restrictions, but that's just kind of how I roll. I like to replay these games over and over again, and I like to put restrictions on them just to kind of play them differently, explore these mechanics. But in my heart of hearts, I'm also a red mage, so every now and then I'll just, I do a little bit of everything. I'll play some BizHawk shufflers or randomizers. And I stream Friday through Sunday at about 4 p.m. Pacific time.
Nice. Cool. And for anybody who doesn't know, I'm Captain Stickfigure, or Preston is fine. Also, I'm a career streamer. I do loads of variety, a lot of retro, a lot of Final Fantasy, but not exclusively. Right now, I am on the tail end of Final Fantasy IX playthrough. Maybe mid to 2/3 way through my first Final Fantasy XII playthrough, and we'll just see where the wind takes me from there. I call no man mister, no gods, no masters. So thank you again so much, everyone, for being involved. Oh, I stream also on, well, my stream schedule is changing, so just keep an eye out. I'm not really sure what it's going to change to. Yeah, it's a secret. It's a secret. That's why no one's going to watch. Best kept secret on Twitch. My streaming schedule. I have been doing Monday mornings at around 9 a.m. Pacific and Wednesday nights around 7-ish p.m. Wednesday's probably going to stay, and I think that Monday is going to change to Friday, but TBD. Anyway, let's see about a raid. Does anybody have a raid suggestion before I get buried in indecision?
Any Trepies live?
Let's see.
Quite a few. I know
Yeah.
B is doing 9 years on Twitch anniversary.
Oh, yeah.
Saw that.
Oh, absolutely.
I just saw that. She posted that in the Women's Guild today, and I was like, holy crap, that is
Hell
so
yeah.
long.
Well, that's it. Then that's the one. Good for B. We are all also, since we haven't really mentioned it, all of us are on the Trepies team, which is run by Eyes on B, who's a fantastic.
raid.
Yeah, we're going to raid. Please stick around. B is a fantastic creator. She's a warm, wonderful person. And that's the end of that thought. Here we go. All right. Yeah. Thanks so much, everybody. Thank you, chat, for hanging out with us. Thank you to my wonderful, wonderful guests. It was so lovely getting to chat with you and get to know you all a little bit better. And I hope you all have.
Likewise. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I had a great time.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
I'm thinking I might try to do something like this for any number of games that I finish, and just have like a little follow-up conversation with some folks. So I'll. I guess when 9/12 come up, I'll put a word out, and if anyone wants to hop on, you are all globally invited.
Fantastic.
Sounds
I'll
good.
absolutely be
Thank
around
you.
for 9 for sure. I love
Yay!
Yeah,
Awesome.
I love 9.
Ah, super. I'm looking forward to it. I will let you know when that happens. And now we're gonna hop over to Eyes on B. So have a wonderful night, everybody. Bye bye.
that. Take care.
Bye.